Sylvia sits alone by the fountain in a tranquil garden.
A serene and gentle smile crosses Sylvia's face.
Someone runs quickly toward Sylvia, their footsteps echoing across the stone.
Rudy, a young blonde boy, approaches with a joyful expression.
The young boy throws his arms around Sylvia in a warm embrace.
Sylvia asks about his plans at the Imperial Palace, but Rudy insists that talking to her is far more important. A man's footsteps approach as he apologizes for keeping her waiting.
Kneeling before her, the dark-haired man explains he rushed through his work just to see her sooner. He gazes up at her with intense, red-eyed devotion.
Sylvia looks down, her eyes wide with a mix of surprise and emotion. She blushes deeply as the dark-haired man gently takes her hand.
Flustered and trembling slightly, Sylvia struggles to process his forwardness. He looks into her eyes and promises that he will always prioritize her above all else. Sylvia offers a soft, appreciative look in response to his vow. Rudy happily clings to Sylvia, interrupting the heavy atmosphere with his affection. The young boy loudly declares his love for Sylvia. Sylvia and the dark-haired man share a tender moment while embracing the young boy. Sunset casts a warm, golden glow over the expansive Roseanne estate. Sylvia stands solitary by a window as the day ends.
Her reflection in the window pane reveals a deeply melancholic expression.
Sylvia laments that her fiancé has neglected her once again, failing to even celebrate her birthday. A profound sense of loneliness and repetition settles over her.
Growing up in the house of Count Rosen, Sylvia was consistently treated as the family's lowest priority.
Young Sylvia cries out for her parents to wait as they walk away from her. She desperately asks about the plans to have her debut dress made to her. She recalls how much she had been looking forward to that one special dress for her social debut.
Her father looks back with a cold, terrifying glare. With a sharp, sudden crack sounding, the father yells for her to let go as he violently strikes her.
Collapsed on the floor, Sylvia is left in despair while her father dismisses the situation. Her mother looks down with disdain, lecturing Sylvia not to be selfish since she is the older sister.
Through her tears, Sylvia tries to protest that they had made these plans with her first.
Her father barks that her concerns are unimportant and can wait. Footsteps approach as someone calls out to the carrots.
Rudy, the younger brother, asks if they are finally ready to leave.
Her parents immediately dote on Rudy, dismissing Sylvia's pain as mere persistence while they plan to go look at horses.
Sylvia stares blankly, her face marked by the physical and emotional blow.
She realizes her parents never valued her as the eldest daughter. The household revolved entirely around doting on her much younger brother, Rudy. In the shadows of the home, Sylvia watched as her brother remained the center of everyone's world. A maid looks at Sylvia with a face full of annoyance and judgment.
Sylvia stands holding a hairbrush, looking small and neglected.
The maids stand over Sylvia, speaking to her with visible irritation. Laughing amongst themselves, the servants walk away and tell her to come back later. Sylvia feels herself sinking into a dark void as the constant neglect wears her heart down.
She remained trapped in the thorns of her family's shadow while they walked together in the light.
Sylvia admits she once hoped that getting a fiancé would finally change her miserable circumstances.
A formal frame introduces Logian, her fiancé and the third son of a family of knights.
Chosen by her father for convenience, the brown-haired Logian was her only hope for escape. She recalls a moment of perceived kindness that is now shattered like glass. Sylvia realizes that even now, her fiancé is likely neglecting her to keep a woman named Asheli company. Sylvia touches her forehead, looking weary. Logian and Asheli enjoy each other's company.
They share a close, intimate moment. Sylvia reflects on her fiancé's neglect.
She recalls Logan constantly canceling their dates to escort Asheli instead, heartlessly telling her to find someone else. Sylvia laments how she endured being a secondary priority, hoping in vain that her partner would eventually cherish her. Sylvia stands alone before the large gorse. Despite her loneliness, Sylvia tries to remain positive because it is her special birthday. Sylvia arrives at her fiancé's estate. Sylvia stands silently before the door.
Asheli notices Sylvia and greets her with a bright, enthusiastic expression.
She happily mentions that she was also visiting the estate today. Asheli suddenly acts surprised as she realizes that today is actually Sylvia's birthday. She smugly admits that she was the one who prevented Logian from celebrating the day with his fiancé. Asheli leans in close to Sylvia. She whispers that Logian dismissed the importance of the day, deciding to send Sylvia's gift at a later time.
Sylvia maintains a cold, silent stare. Sylvia reflects on how she is once again being treated as a low priority.
Asheli covers her mouth and gales. She acknowledges that she has been put on the back burner yet again.
The pink-haired woman continues her mockery.
Asheli insists that all three of them should go inside and have tea together.
Asheli tightly grips both of Sylvia's hands.
Sylvia rejects the offer, telling Asheli that she plans to return at another time. Ishval throws a tantrum as Sylvia desperately warns her to calm down near the dangerous horses.
A sharp, quick tug sounding.
A sudden shout sounding as a horse rears up, knocking the groom and Ishval to the ground.
Ishval's eyes widen in absolute terror.
Sylvia realizes with dread that Ishval is about to be crushed beneath the carriage wheels. She stares in horror at the impending accident.
Sylvia realizes she has no choice but to reveal her secret and use magic.
Sylvia grits her teeth in concentration.
Bright magic energy swirls around them. Sylvia shields Ishval from the impact.
Sylvia gasps for air, horrified by the realization that she narrowly escaped being crushed to death.
She reflects on how magic is a rare power in this country, granted only to a chosen few.
While many men possess this gift, it is an extremely rare occurrence for a woman.
It is rare for women to possess magic. Sylvia notes that many noble families harbor a deep-seated hatred for magical powers they cannot comprehend. She sadly realizes that both her own family and Logian would likely despise her for having this power. Sylvia stands alone, looking completely drained.
The stable boy tries to calm the horses.
Ishval begins to cry from the shock.
Sylvia's gaze remains fixed and distant.
Ishval wails loudly about how she thought she was going to die in the accident. Sylvia sternly notes that the incident happened because Ishval provoked the horse.
Blood drips from a fresh wound.
Clutching her bleeding arm, Sylvia laments that this has turned into a truly terrible birthday. A frantic shout sounding as Logan rushes toward them, demanding to know what happened.
Ishval cries out Logan's name as he reaches them.
Logan embraces Ishval amidst a warm, golden sunset. Ishval cries about the wild horse while Logan reacts in shock.
Logan's eyes glow with a terrifying, bloodthirsty purple light.
Logan furiously demands why Sylvia didn't protect the frail Ishval. Logan shouts that Sylvia must be more dependable as his fiancé.
Trembling and heartbroken, Sylvia struggles to speak Logan's name. Sylvia realizes she is the one bleeding while Ishval is safe.
Sylvia reaches out, pleading for Logan to look at her.
A sudden, sharp crack sounding as Logan turns his back on her. Logan coldly dismisses Sylvia, stating her injuries can wait.
Ishval smiles smugly as Sylvia stares in total disbelief. Sylvia laments being cast aside as a secondary priority once more. Reflections of her neglectful family shatter in her mind.
Sylvia vows to stop being last and escape her family's trap.
Sylvia's eyes ignite with a brilliant emerald magical energy. A sudden, powerful rush of wind sounding as Sylvia declares she will live for herself first.
Logan is stunned to see Sylvia manifesting powerful magic.
Turning away from Logan, Sylvia chooses a new path.
Sylvia tells Logan to find happiness with his childhood friend.
Sylvia walks alone through the quiet, sunlit town streets. A soft, liberated smile crosses Sylvia's face.
Sylvia looks down at the blood staining her sleeve.
Sylvia notices a commotion involving a group of aggressive men. Reports continue regarding the search for the Emperor's hidden child.
The red-eyed man orders the death of anyone who interferes.
Sylvia watches as a shopkeeper brutally beats the young Rudy.
Sylvia decides she cannot ignore the child's suffering. Sylvia steps between the men to shield Rudy from harm.
The shopkeeper demands to know who this meddling woman is.
Rudy looks up with wide, tear-filled purple eyes.
Sylvia offers to pay for the apples if they release Rudy.
The man mocks Sylvia with a predatory, twisted expression.
A sharp, quick grab sounding as the man seizes her arm.
Sylvia calls him a pig and prepares to use magic.
A booming blast sounding as Sylvia's magic throws the man back.
Sylvia stands tall over Rudy as the men collapse. Sylvia looks down at her defeated attackers with cold disdain. Sylvia turns her attention to the shivering blonde-haired boy.
Sylvia stands resolutely in the sunlit alleyway.
Sylvia offers a warm, gentle smile to the terrified Rudy.
Rudy tries to act brave despite his many bruises. Sylvia praises Rudy's bravery for enduring the assault.
Sylvia touches Rudy's nose while explaining that stealing is wrong.
Rudy cries that he only steals to avoid being beaten by his director.
Sylvia realizes Rudy is suffering at the hands of a cruel orphanage.
Rudy stands alone, looking small and completely neglected.
Sylvia reflects on the child's miserable and complicated circumstances. Sylvia offers Rudy a home and protection under her care.
Sylvia introduces herself and asks for the boy's name.
Rudy looks up in shock, clutching his tattered clothes.
The blonde boy looks up with teary eyes and a bruised face.
Sylvia offers a warm, gentle greeting to the boy she calls Lion.
The scene as Sylvia leads Lion inside, the staff gossips about her injured arm and the strange boy. A brown-haired maid watches them pass with a look of pure annoyance.
Sylvia singles out the maid, ordering her to take Lion and provide him with a bath immediately.
The maid reacts with indignant disbelief, questioning why she's being assigned such a menial task.
Attempting to dodge the order, the maid claims she has cleaning duties and suggests doing it later.
A sudden, sharp tap sounding from Sylvia's foot as she silently fumes at the servant's insolent attitude.
The maid gasps in sudden realization of her precarious position.
Sylvia firmly asserts her authority, reminding the servant that she is the master while the other is merely a maid. She demands to know if the maid truly believes she has the right to ignore a direct command. With a commanding gesture, Sylvia orders it done immediately, forcing a panicked apology from the terrified servant. The maid bows low in a display of absolute submission before her cold mistress.
Grumbling under her breath, the maid leads Lion away to begin the bath.
Sylvia reassures the confused Lion that they will get him cleaned up and into fresh clothes. A rhythmic, quick tap sounding as a polished pair of boots enters the room while Sylvia reads.
Lion emerges, looking nervous but pristine in a set of fine new purple clothes.
Sylvia's face lights up with sheer delight at the boy's transformation.
She clasps her hands together, praising Lion for looking as pure as an angel.
Sylvia suddenly pauses as a shocking thought crosses her mind mid-praise. She wonders if the golden-haired child before her could actually be the Emperor's secret heir.
The realization leaves her looking completely stunned and ecstatic.
A portrait depicts the Emperor of Florencia, a young and highly respected ruler. Lore reveals that the emperor was injured in a war 6 years ago and remains ill as a result.
A formal frame highlights the dire crisis currently facing the line of succession. The heart of the problem is revealed to be the fact that the emperor currently has no empress. Sylvia worries that the nation will inevitably fall into total chaos if something happens to the monarch.
She recalls the tale of the emperor falling in love with a commoner on the battlefield 6 years ago.
The woman went into hiding due to her low status, though it was later discovered she was pregnant.
A dying woman's letter begs for the protection of her son who carries the emperor's noble blood.
Sylvia clutches her head, desperately trying to recall the specific features described in the palace reports. The search continues as the child's whereabouts remain a mystery to the public.
Grand Duke Willilhart Valuehelm, the emperor's fierce half-brother, is introduced as the one leading the search. Overwhelmed by the implications, Sylvia wonders if she should have left the situation alone after all.
Lion notices her distress, but Sylvia tells him to stay put while she manages her thoughts.
She remembers the palace description, a golden-haired boy approximately 6 years of age.
Sylvia gazes intently into Lion's vivid, glowing purple eyes.
A vision of Lion in royal regalia confirms he bears the unmistakable proof of the current emperor's bloodline.
Sylvia chides herself for not connecting the obvious dots much sooner. A sudden, loud commotion erupts throughout the mansion, startling both Sylvia and Lion. Sensing danger, Sylvia instructs Lion to hide in the back of the room. The servants panic as they realize the terrifying Battle-Maniac Grand Duke has arrived at the estate looking for the child. Sylvia realizes with horror that the Grand Duke is here specifically because of her actions with Lion.
Stories of Willilhart's blood-stained military career and fame as a hero flash through the atmosphere.
Sylvia panics, realizing information spread too fast and she stood out by bringing such a high-profile child home. Looking down into the main hall, Sylvia sees the imposing figure of the Grand Duke waiting below.
Willilhart stands with his arms crossed, his red eyes glowing with an intimidating, predatory intensity.
Sylvia nervously acknowledges his presence, addressing him by his formal title as he looks up.
The Grand Duke reveals they received a tip-off about the child's location, sending a chill through Sylvia.
Willilhart notes that an informant claimed the child might have been brought to this estate. Sylvia looks panicked while thinking about how the Grand Duke's high-handed attitude has earned him the resentment of many nobles. A sharp metallic ring sounding as Willilhart reaches for his blade, wondering if the Emperor's hidden child is truly here.
Willilhart looms over Sylvia with his sword drawn, claiming that his current actions are for her own good.
Trapped beneath the blade, Sylvia realizes she must act quickly to clear up the dangerous misunderstanding. A frantic thought questions if the current situation could actually be a lie. Willilhart glares with glowing red eyes, making Sylvia worry that she looks like a total villain in this scenario. Leon suddenly rushes into the hall, shouting for the two of them to stop.
Leon stands protectively in front of Sylvia, telling Willilhart not to bully her because she was the one who helped him.
Sylvia looks down at the brave boy shielding her from the Grand Duke. Willilhart echoes the word helped with a look of genuine surprise on his face. Sylvia pleads for the opportunity to explain the actual situation to him. Willilhart acknowledges her words as a soft, metallic click sounding while he sheaths his sword. Willilhart apologizes for blindly believing malicious rumors and expresses deep regret for his disrespectful behavior. He offers a sincere apology for his actions towards someone who is already suffering from an injury. Sylvia notes that the entire misunderstanding simply could not be helped. Sylvia admits that her father's terrible reputation likely made the Grand Duke suspicious of her motives. Willilhart gazes at her with a calm and silent expression. Sylvia looks back at him with wide, curious eyes. She is surprised to find that he is actually showing concern for her physical injuries. Leon clings to Sylvia's dress as Willilhart kneels before him, a soft thud sounding. Willilhart observes that Leon's glowing purple eyes and appearance match the Emperor perfectly, leaving no room for mistake.
Willilhart formally addresses him as Crown Prince Leon and explains they have been searching for him.
Leon is left in total shock to hear himself called a crown prince. Willilhart offers his hand, stating that they will now escort the boy to the imperial palace. Leon screams a loud refusal, causing Willilhart to look up in complete shock. Leon declares he will not go anywhere with a person who bullied Sylvia.
Sylvia wonders what she should do now that Leon is adamantly refusing to leave her side.
Willilhart decides to withdraw for the time being since the boy has become so wary of them.
Willilhart apologizes for the trouble caused by their incompetence and promises to return tomorrow morning.
Sylvia weakly agrees to the plan as the tension finally begins to dissipate.
Later that night, Sylvia and Leon lie huddled together in her large bed.
Sylvia reflects on her chaotic birthday and realizes she has no choice but to hand Leon over when the Duke returns.
She observes the mansion exterior, noting that guards have already been placed around the grounds for security. Sylvia watches the sleeping boy, noting it's only natural he is protected since he carries the Emperor's bloodline. Leon's eyes suddenly flutter open, and Sylvia is surprised to find that he was awake.
Leon apologizes for being selfish about the scary person and promises to go with them tomorrow.
Sylvia looks at the boy with a somber and thoughtful expression. Sylvia thinks that the Grand Duke might actually be a gentleman, and that Leon's life will be much better now.
Sylvia offers a gentle look as she contemplates the boy's future.
A soft, quick rustle sounding as Leon grabs Sylvia's dress, preparing to confess something. Leon tearfully confesses that he would rather stay with Sylvia than go off to have a good life.
Sylvia wonders if the boy has truly taken a liking to her and if she is the first adult he ever relied on. Leon reflects that this is the first time someone has ever cared about him more than anyone else.
Sylvia pulls him into a warm hug, suggesting they sleep huddled together for one last night. The next morning, Sylvia stands alone in the courtyard wearing a blue dress.
She wonders if it's already time for the Grand Duke to arrive while Leon is still getting ready.
Sylvia looks off toward the mansion gates with a patient pace.
A heavy, rhythmic trot sounding as a horse-drawn carriage pulls up to the mansion.
Sylvia reacts with a look of sudden surprise as the visitors arrive.
A heavy, rhythmic trot sounding as a horse-drawn carriage pulls up to the mansion.
Sylvia reacts with a look of sudden surprise as two unexpected visitors arrive.
Sylvia questions why her father has arrived in the company of the man she recently rejected. The Duke looks at her sternly and notes that he heard she took it upon herself to break off the engagement.
Sylvia is left speechless by the sudden confrontation. The Duke demands to know what she could possibly be thinking and reminds her that they are heavily indebted to the other family. He praises the younger man as a fine individual who is far too good for someone like Sylvia.
Sylvia reflects sadly on how her father never listens to her and how things have only worsened because she always accepted being put last.
Furious at her silence, the Duke screams for her to leave his house immediately.
A sudden, fierce resolution takes hold as Sylvia realizes she is completely finished with this treatment.
Both the Duke and her former fiancé are taken aback by the sudden change in her demeanor.
Sylvia begins her final response to her father's ultimatum. With a cold and determined expression, she declares that she will pack her belongings and leave right now.
The man in purple attempts to placate her, condescendingly telling her to stop being stubborn and quit her childish tantrums.
He reaches out to grab her, physically asserting his control over the situation. He smugly claims that if she apologizes immediately, both he and her father will grant her their forgiveness. He mocks her with a grin, while Sylvia looks at him with utter disgust.
Sylvia shouts that she would rather use every bit of her magic to live alone than ever consider marrying someone like him.
Her former fiancé is left stunned by the intensity of her rejection.
Sylvia firmly warns him never to touch her so casually again as she steps away.
A sharp, grating sound as the man in purple grits his teeth in a fit of silent rage.
He snaps at her, accusing her of becoming incredibly cheeky all of a sudden.
He aggressively corners her, his eyes flashing with a dangerous and unstable energy.
Sylvia senses the escalating danger and worries that the situation is about to turn truly violent. A sudden, powerful grip stops the man's arm mid-motion as a new figure intervenes.
Sylvia finds herself shielded by the imposing presence of the Grand Duke.
Willilhart easily restrains the other man's wrist, his expression one of cold and predatory focus. Willilhart sternly demands to know what they think they are doing to someone he is indebted to. The atmosphere becomes heavy and suffocating as he repeats his question to the terrified men. Willilhart stands protectively between Sylvia and her two harassers, his presence completely dominating the hall. Sylvia addresses him with a mixture of shock and profound relief.
The Duke is paralyzed with fear, recognizing the battle fiend and wondering why a man of his stature is present. A loud, pained cry sounding as Willilhart applies pressure to the man's arm, forcing him to let go.
The man is forced into a humiliating retreat by the Grand Duke's superior strength.
Willilhart's red eyes glow with an intimidating intensity as he stares down his targets.
He explains that he found a woman to whom he owes a great debt and felt compelled to intervene on her behalf. Willilhart asks if his presence was unwanted, prompting a sincere thank you from the grateful Sylvia.
The Duke nervously asks if his worthless daughter has done something wrong to the Crown Prince. Willilhart counters that she isn't worthless at all, revealing that she rescued and protected the Emperor's secret child.
He announces his intention to bring Sylvia to the imperial palace to be properly rewarded, much to her surprise. The man in purple points a finger in disbelief, shouting that there is no way someone like Sylvia could have achieved such a thing. Sylvia repeats his cruel words to herself, her expression filled with a quiet, lingering sadness.
She recalls the many times her father and Rosian callously told her she could wait because her needs always came second. Sylvia's attention is suddenly drawn upward by a commotion from the second-floor balcony.
A loud, protective shout rings out as someone offers to take care of the people bullying Sylvia.
Lion stands at the railing with a look of pure, unadulterated fury directed at the visitors. Sylvia screams for Lion to be careful as he leans dangerously far over the edge of the balcony.
Terror strikes the room as Lion loses his footing and tumbles over the railing toward the hard floor below. Sylvia lunges forward with her hands outstretched, desperately calling for her magic to activate in time.
A soft, swirling puff sounding as Sylvia's magic manifests just in time to cushion the boy's fall.
Leon lands safely on the floor, looking around in utter bewilderment.
Sylvia rushes to his side, asking if he is injured.
Leon celebrates being saved again while Willilhart warns him to be more careful. Willilhart gazes at her with a contemplative and intrigued expression.
The men express absolute shock that a woman could possess such magic.
Willilhart bows, thanking Sylvia for her bravery in saving the Crown Prince twice.
He takes her hand with respect, praising her rare talent and sincere heart.
Willilhart looks at her with an intense and serious focus.
Surrounded by blue flowers, Willilhart declares a bold desire for Sylvia.
Sylvia reacts with wide-eyed shock and a deep blush.
The former fiancé interjects with a sharp tug, claiming Sylvia is still his. Sylvia firmly reiterates that she has already broken off their engagement.
A sharp, metallic click sounding as Willilhart commands silence and prepares his blade.
Willilhart threatens the man, warning him not to interfere or face death.
The man cowers in terror as Willilhart's presence completely dominates the space.
Sylvia and Leon watch the intense confrontation in a stunned silence. Sylvia's sister arrives with a companion, demanding to know the source of the noise.
Willilhart takes Sylvia's arm, stating that it is finally time to leave.
They depart the mansion, leaving the defeated men behind.
A heavy, rhythmic trot sounding as the carriage travels away.
Silence fills the carriage as the group travels together.
Sylvia hesitantly asks for clarification regarding his earlier declaration of wanting her. Willilhart explains he wishes to appoint her as the Crown Prince's caretaker. He describes the turmoil at the palace and his need for a trustworthy ally. He promises that all her basic needs will be fully guaranteed. He mentions she will be generously compensated for her dedicated service.
Sylvia realizes this is the perfect opportunity to leave her past behind.
Leon joyfully asks if this means they can stay together from now on.
Willilhart turns serious, warning that the role carries a heavy and dangerous responsibility. He explains that Leon carries the entire nation's fate on his shoulders.
A crown sits amidst thorns and dark stains, signifying the grim stakes.
Willilhart warns that she must be prepared for execution if anything fails.
Sylvia clenches her dress, terrified by the weight of such a grim ultimatum.
She realizes she cannot leave Leon alone in a palace full of conspiracies.
A sudden jolt causes Leon to stumble forward as Sylvia cries out.
Willilhart catches them both in a protective and sturdy embrace.
Sylvia frantically apologizes for the clumsy and sudden accident. The three of them share a quiet and close moment in the carriage.
Willilhart begins to respond to her frantic and nervous apology.
Sylvia declares she would be deeply honored to accept the caretaker position.
Willilhart thanks her while holding their hands in a gesture of partnership.
He expresses his complete and sincere trust in Lady Sylvia.
Leon hugs her tightly, expressing his joy at her decision.
Leon asks if this means they will be together forever. Sylvia warmly confirms her desire to stay by his side. Sylvia notes the necessity of using formal titles when they are in public.
She vows to prioritize the child's safety and well-being above everything else.
Sylvia reflects on finally making a major life decision for herself.
The Grand Imperial Palace stands before them.
Willilhart shows Sylvia to her new and luxurious guest suite.
Sylvia stands in a marvelously decorated hallway, gasping in amazement at her surroundings.
She notes that the Imperial Palace's hospitality is truly impressive for preparing such a room so quickly.
Willilhart explains that her quarters are conveniently located next to Ryon's to facilitate her new duties.
Their conversation is interrupted by a sharp clicking tap sounding as a new figure approaches the group.
A short-haired woman in a maid's uniform introduces herself as Kokol, identifying herself as the prince's guard and personal handmaiden.
Sylvia observes Kokol's focused demeanor and realizes the woman must be incredibly capable.
Willilhart confirms that Kokol is his trusted subordinate and has also been tasked with attending to Sylvia's personal needs. Sylvia politely greets her new attendant while Kokol bows deeply, expressing her dedication to the service. Rian peeks tentatively from behind a large, golden-accented door, looking somewhat overwhelmed by the formal atmosphere. Sylvia leans down to ask the boy if he finds his new living quarters to his liking. Rian pouts and questions why Sylvia has adopted such a formal tone, begging her to speak to him as she normally would. Sylvia lets out a nervous laugh, explaining that maintaining proper etiquette in the palace is a complicated necessity for adults. Rian fidgets with his shirt, appearing deeply troubled by the weight of the formal concepts Sylvia just mentioned. He reflects on the heavy burden of his royal heritage and the expectations placed on him to become a future ruler.
Sylvia notices his sudden sadness and realizes the drastic change in his environment has left him feeling deeply anxious.
A quick, heavy thud sounding as Willilhart approaches, confirming that the boy's destiny is indeed monumental.
Willilhart reminds him of his status as the heir and mentions that an audience with the emperor is inevitable. Terrified by the mention of the emperor, Rian desperately clings to Sylvia's dress and asks if she will stay by his side. Willilhart officially requests that Sylvia accompany the prince to the audience in her capacity as his primary caretaker. Sylvia feels a surge of internal panic, realizing that a single mistake in the presence of the emperor could lead to her execution.
Sensing the tension, Kokol offers to guide Sylvia through the palace grounds to help her acclimate to the new setting.
Ryan's eyes light up with joy as he asks if this means he can finally enjoy a walk with Sylvia.
Kokol pauses for a moment, softly repeating the word as if considering the simplicity of the request.
She offers a rare, gentle smile and confirms the plan, causing Rian to cheer in celebration.
Eager to begin, Rian grabs Sylvia's hand and begins to pull her toward the garden. Sylvia follows his lead, agreeing to the outing as they step through the flower-lined path.
High above the garden, a mysterious woman with long silver hair watches the group from a balcony.
The woman gazes down with a cold stare, questioning the identity of the plain-looking woman accompanying the prince.
She turns away with an expression of pure disgust, declaring the entire scene to be utterly annoying.
Dark purple roses and sharp thorns frame the woman's departure, signaling a growing sense of palace intrigue.
The group gathers near a grand fountain, but Rian suddenly stops walking as a look of sorrow washes over him. Sylvia notices the change in his mood and asks why he has suddenly become so quiet and somber. Rian explains that the flowers in the garden remind him of the orphanage and the friends he left behind.
He recalls the horrific conditions of his past, where a greedy headmaster hoarded gold while forcing children to steal. Rian cringes in pain as he remembers being physically abused whenever he failed at his forced pickpocketing duties.
The memory of the other children's suffering leaves him looking completely heartbroken and fragile. Sylvia looks on with a heavy heart, realizing that the young boy has endured more trauma than anyone should ever face.
Kokol interjects with cold pragmatism, stating that the orphanage's illegal activities warrant a full and immediate investigation.
A sudden metallic clatter sounding as Willilhart drops to one knee in a formal display of military respect toward the boy. Willilhart explains that, as a prince, Rian now possesses the authority to command the emperor's subjects as his own. He urges the boy to make a wish, promising that he will personally carry out any order given. Rian is left speechless, stunned by the realization that he actually has the power to command someone as intimidating as Willilhart.
Sylvia resolves to support Rian's development as a leader, knowing he must learn to wield his authority properly.
She places a comforting hand on his shoulder and gently encourages him to take a deep breath and stay calm. Rian looks up at her with tears in his eyes, finding strength in her steady and reassuring presence. Sylvia offers a warm, encouraging smile and tells him to simply state exactly what he wants to happen. Finding his courage, Rian shouts his first command, desperately begging Willilhart to save the suffering children at the orphanage. Willilhart accepts the mission with a predatory grin, declaring that a total purge of the orphanage's corruption has officially begun. Vivid red spider lilies bloom amidst butterflies, marking the beginning of a dark and necessary retribution.
A final, brutal flashback shows the headmaster striking a defenseless girl, emphasizing the urgent need for Willilhart's intervention.
The headmaster strikes a defenseless girl, demanding the children steal more valuable items. He aggressively questions who else would bother feeding them to maintain his control. The man recalls Rian's escape as a mere way to vent his frustrations. In the present, the headmaster demands to know who has arrived at the door.
A young girl peeks through a doorway to announce the arrival of guests. The large wooden orphanage building stands under a cloudy sky. A dark carriage waits at the foot of the stairs.
Willilhart notes the lack of response from the building's residents as they arrived.
A sudden soft rustle sounding as Rian hides behind Willilhart's heavy cloak.
Sylvia asks if the prince is all right, suggesting he could have stayed at the palace. Rian insists on being present since he was the one who gave the order.
The headmaster opens the door and asks for their business with a fake smile.
Willilhart identifies himself and states they are investigating Ryan's unjust mistreatment at the orphanage.
The headmaster hysterically denies the boy's royal lineage, calling the situation ridiculous.
Willilhart ignores the protests and pushes inside to begin a thorough inspection. He walks through the hall while the headmaster lies about the children taking naps. Ryan immediately shouts that the man is telling a blatant lie. He explains the children were never allowed to rest and were always forced to work. The headmaster glares at the boy with pure malice and silent threats. He dismisses the prince's testimony as nothing but a child's rambling that shouldn't be believed. A light, quick patter sounding as someone runs down the wooden hallway.
A bruised girl runs to Willilhart and desperately begs for his help.
Tears stream down the terrified girl's battered and swollen face. Willilhart's expression turns deadly as he sees the physical state of the child.
The headmaster grabs the girl and forcefully silences her screams with his hand.
A sharp, metallic ring sounding as Willilhart begins to draw his blade. He declares the entire orphanage corrupt and promises to begin a total cleansing. The headmaster trembles in shock, realizing his cruel operation has finally been exposed.
An aura of dread surrounds the man's panicked and sweating face.
He suddenly lunges at Rian, blaming the boy for his impending ruin.
The headmaster screams in a rage, reaching for the cowering and terrified prince. Sylvia steps forward, blocking the man's path with a steady hand. A powerful, howling gust sounding as Sylvia's magic throws the attacker across the room. A sudden, heavy thud sounding as Willilhart's sword pins the man to the floor. Willilhart looms over the fallen headmaster, condemning his grave and unforgivable crimes.
He coldly informs the man to prepare himself for the ultimate capital punishment.
Guards haul the whimpering and bound headmaster away to face his judgment. Narration confirms the children were rescued and moved to a safe new facility.
The group of orphans embrace, crying with relief at their newfound freedom.
Rian watches with a peaceful and relieved smile as his friends are saved.
The scene shifts back to the grand and peaceful imperial palace. Sylvia stands in a beautiful, formal new outfit, looking serene and elegant. She pauses to reflect on the lingering chaos of the past few days. Sylvia and Willilhart talk outside in the warm glow of the garden light. Willilhart listens to her thoughts with a serious and focused expression. He takes her hand, thanking her for protecting the prince once again. Sylvia's heart races as a deep, uncontrollable blush covers her entire face. He reaffirms his total confidence in his judgment for choosing her as the caretaker. Sylvia humorously concludes that despite his intensity, the Grand Duke is a total airhead. Sylvia looks completely flustered as she considers the weight of being acknowledged by the royal family, while the maid, Coco, stands by and addresses her directly as Lady Sylvia. Coco leads Sylvia through the palace as she explains that a sudden and unexpected meeting has been requested. Coco reveals that the Emperor himself wishes to meet with Prince Lion and Sylvia immediately, framed by a luminous aura of flowers and a silhouette of the monarch. Sylvia is visibly shaken by the news, questioning if the audience is truly happening right now. Coco confirms the urgency and hints that the Emperor has developed a specific fascination with Sylvia. A floral backdrop emphasizes the declaration that the Emperor is very interested in Lady Sylvia. Sylvia stands in a state of nervous contemplation, her hands clasped tightly as she processes the sudden summons. Lost in thought, Sylvia wonders why such a powerful ruler would find any interest in her. The scene shifts to Ashley's estate, marked by clear blue skies and blooming roses. Inside a lavish bedroom, a voice groans in frustration, complaining about being utterly bored. A pink-haired girl named Ashley pouts on her bed, appearing grumpy and restless. She kicks her legs in the air, frustrated with the lack of excitement in her life. Well, that's one way to handle a nap. Ashley recalls her ex-fiancé's ruin, imagining him in agony as he blames Sylvia for his downfall, while she reflects on how good of a partner she used to be to him. Her memories turn darker as a sudden, crackling spark sounding as her resentment for Sylvia grows. Lying back, Ashley muses over the rumors that she might end up engaged to the man Sylvia lost. She reminisces about being his cherished childhood friend and how much she enjoyed watching Sylvia's distressed reactions in the past. Ashley seethes with jealousy, questioning why royalty is noticing Sylvia and concluding that the other woman is becoming far too arrogant.
Her eyes narrow with malice as she declares that Sylvia will never be forgiven for her social ascent.
Surrounded by dark, thorny flowers, Ashley smiles wickedly and vows that she will never allow things to end in Sylvia's favor.
Back at the palace, Sylvia and Prince Lion stand before a set of massive, ornate golden doors guarded by 2 armored knights.
Sylvia is filled with trepidation at the thought of meeting the Emperor as a light, heavy creak sounding as the grand doors begin to open.
She continues to worry about what Kokol meant by the Emperor's strong interest in her. Lion looks up at Sylvia with wide, curious eyes, asking if his father is truly waiting inside the room. The young prince appears hopeful yet anxious.
Sylvia's eyes reflect her inner turmoil and determination as she prepares to face the ruler. Narrative text confirms that the Emperor is indeed looking forward to meeting Prince Lion and his companion.
Sylvia offers Lion a gentle smile, suggesting they begin their visit with a long and friendly conversation.
Lion's face lights up with a cheerful and eager response. The group enters a vast, sunlit hall where the Emperor's silhouette is visible behind a sheer circular canopy surrounding his bed. Sylvia and Lion stop before the dais, presenting themselves with the proper respect.
A voice from behind the curtain acknowledges the arrival of his son and the prince's caretaker.
Sylvia bows her head deeply while Lion excitedly corrects the Emperor, shouting his own name with pride. The Emperor, a man with long, flowing, light purple hair and piercing eyes, sits up and commands them to raise their faces.
Sylvia looks up, startled by the intense presence of the man before her.
A memory of the Emperor on a balcony flashes by as she reflects that his illness appears much more severe than she had originally suspected. The Emperor grants his permission for Lion to approach his bedside. He reaches out a slender hand and gently cups Lion's face, looking at the boy with a complicated expression. Sylvia watches the interaction from the side, noting the gravity of the situation. The Emperor's expression remains somber as he prepares to address a more serious matter. He reveals that private correspondence suggests Lion possesses a rare talent for magic and demands to know if the boy can actually use it. Sylvia is stunned by the revelation, realizing Lion has never shown any indication of magical abilities before this moment. Lion looks terrified and confused, stammering as he tries to find the words to respond. The Emperor explains that magic is a rare trait in their bloodline, and that Lion's potential as a true heir depends on his ability to command it. Seeing the boy's struggle, the Emperor's aura turns cold and oppressive as he declares the situation to be a total disappointment. Sylvia gasps in shock at the Emperor's blunt and cruel dismissal of the child. She reflects on how much easier Lion's life in the palace would be if he were a mage, but feels the Emperor's expectations are unfair. Sylvia's frustration boils over as she refuses to accept the Emperor's cold treatment of his son. The Emperor looks away with an air of boredom, stating that dealing with the boy is now a low priority for him. Tears well up in Lion's eyes as he feels the crushing weight of his father's rejection.
Sylvia's face contorts with a sudden sharp crackle sounding as her protective rage toward the Emperor reaches its breaking point.
Sylvia addresses the long-haired Emperor, admitting her disrespect while standing her ground.
She passionately asks him to hear Prince Lion's side regarding his magic.
The blonde prince stands nearby with tears streaming down his face.
The Emperor finds her defiance intriguing and concludes that Willilhart made a good choice. He notes her reputation as a talented magic user while approaching her. The Emperor looms over Sylvia amidst a shower of petals as she wonders about his intentions. A bright flash of light obscures the scene. Sylvia imagines a comedic execution scenario where Willilhart beheads her for angering the Emperor. The Emperor draws dangerously close to the light blue-haired woman's face. A sudden, sharp gleam of light cuts across the room. Willilhart bursts into the room, calling out to his brother with urgency. The black-haired Grand Duke yells out as he enters the chamber. His voice echoes through the room decorated with red flowers. Sylvia is shocked by Willilhart's sudden appearance as the Emperor watches them intensely.
A sudden, quick grab sounding as Willilhart catches Sylvia again.
Willilhart steps between them, offering to take responsibility if Sylvia has been disrespectful. He stands protectively in front of Sylvia, his expression grim.
Sylvia looks at Willilhart's back with a sense of relief and realization.
The Emperor observes that his brother seems unusually flustered by the situation.
He remarks that Willilhart has developed a surprising fondness for the young caretaker.
Sylvia blushes deeply at the Emperor's suggestive comment. The Emperor turns away, acknowledging the bond between them. Prince Lion watches the tense exchange with a look of pure terror. The Emperor agrees with their points as he stares with glowing purple eyes. He announces a future banquet to introduce his found child to the influential nobility. He commands Lion to prove his worth and strength to the assembled nobles. The Emperor promises to acknowledge Lion as his heir and apologize if he succeeds. Willilhart, Sylvia, and Lion walk together through the vast ornate hallway.
Lion gazes at the floor, overwhelmed by the pressure of the upcoming debut.
Sylvia asks him directly if he is actually capable of performing magic. She recalls how Lion remained unfazed by her own magic, suspecting he possesses power.
A sudden, soft tap sounding as Sylvia considers the nature of Lion's strange power.
Lion confesses that he used magic once with his mother but can no longer control it.
He admits to hiding his power from Sylvia out of shame or fear.
Sylvia privately wonders if the boy is suffering from a deep magic-related trauma. A vision of the Emperor's past love appears amidst a bed of purple roses. Willilhart explains to Sylvia that his brother was once a much calmer and more merciful person. He describes how the Emperor changed over time due to his royal duties and personal losses. Willilhart suspects that his brother's growing impatience is a result of a consuming illness. Lion apologizes, blaming himself for his inability to meet his father's expectations. Sylvia kneels down and gently takes the young prince's hands in hers. She invites Lion to undergo a special training regimen under her guidance. Sylvia encourages him to show the Emperor exactly what he is capable of achieving.
Lion looks at her with wide eyes, wondering if he truly has the strength to succeed.
Willilhart places a reassuring hand on the boy, telling him that success is possible. He admits that he also struggled greatly during his own early days of sword training.
A humorous flashback reveals a young Willilhart being bullied by a small white rabbit. The three of them stand together, sharing a moment of newfound hope and levity.
Sylvia lets out a sudden light pff sounding as she tries to suppress her laughter.
Willilhart promises his full support while Sylvia wonders if the battle fanatic is being sincere. Willilhart looks deeply into Sylvia's eyes, his expression heavy with unspoken words.
Sylvia gazes back, reaffirming her private belief that beneath his intensity, the Grand Duke is truly a good and kind man.
Willilhart appears increasingly conflicted, a bead of sweat betraying his internal struggle.
He clenches his hand over his heart, surrounded by a soft aura of blooming white flowers.
Sylvia offers a warm, knowing smile, while Prince Lion watches the pair with a sudden, sharp realization.
Both Sylvia and Willilhart are frozen in sheer shock by the boy's unexpected question.
A sudden, quick patter sounding as Sylvia frantically hides her face, both adults becoming completely flustered and beet red.
Sylvia desperately tries to change the subject, insisting they focus on special training, which a dazed Willilhart eventually accepts. While Sylvia determinedly looks ahead, Willilhart remains lost in pensive thought amidst the garden's blossoms.
A light, metallic ring sounding as the group enters a grand hall, encountering a striking woman in a regal purple gown.
Sylvia is immediately captivated by the woman's bewitching elegance as she offers a formal greeting.
The woman curiously asks if the group was in the middle of a private recital. She addresses Sylvia with a chillingly sweet smile, calling her a sister-in-law, while Willilhart looks on with concern.
Narration identifies the newcomer as Lileel, the formidable Duchess of Roland.
Historical records explain that the previous emperor had several consorts, and Lileel is the child of the rightful empress.
It is revealed that the current emperor and the Grand Duke are children of different imperial consorts.
Sylvia reflects on the complex royal genealogy, noting that Lileel has a son close to Lion's age.
Lilibel's eyes glow with a sinister light as she focuses her attention on the young prince.
A sudden, heavy thump sounding as Lion trembles under the weight of her terrifying and malicious gaze.
Sylvia immediately recognizes the pure hatred in the Duchess's eyes and moves to shield Lion from her presence.
Lileel mockingly hides her smile behind a fan, asking if she has frightened the child.
She cruelly dismisses Lion as a coward, questioning how such a weak boy could ever be considered a candidate for the throne. Willilhart intercedes with a stern voice, calling the Duchess by her title and demanding she stop her verbal assault.
Lilibel's face contorts with rage as she snaps at Willilhart, calling him a filthy battle fiend and warning him against such familiarity.
Willilhart's eyes narrow, his gaze turning cold and sharp in response to her insults. The Duchess asserts her superior lineage from the Empress, expressing her deep resentment that the current Emperor holds the throne.
A tense silence falls over the hall as Sylvia looks toward the Grand Duke with a worried expression.
Lileel suddenly pauses, clutching her fan as she realizes she has let her true, dark feelings slip.
She quickly masks her malice with a fake smile, laughing off her previous comments as a mere moment of being mean-spirited. Her eyes remain cold as she addresses Prince Lion directly once again. The Duchess offers a hollow apology to the boy, though her gaze remains deeply unsettling. She shifts her focus toward Sylvia, preparing to address the prince's caretaker.
Lileel offers a formal and sinister greeting, expressing a hope that they will get along in the future.
Sylvia remains wary, concluding that while the Duchess is beautiful, she is a terrifying woman who clearly loathes the Grand Duke. A sense of foreboding lingers as Sylvia considers the dangerous path ahead.
She continues to shield Lion, hoping that no further harm will come to the traumatized prince after this encounter.
Time passes as white petals drift through a darkening purple sky. The scene shifts to a training courtyard where a frustrated lion struggles to manifest any sign of magic. Sylvia cheers him on enthusiastically, urging the boy to visualize his own internal power. Lion strains with all his might, his eyes glowing intensely as he attempts to call forth his magic.
He lets out a determined shout, but the effort results in nothing but a shower of light and silence.
Both Sylvia and Lion are left staring in disappointment as the boy's hands remain empty. A sudden heavy thud sounding as Lion collapses to the ground in despair, declaring that it's simply no use. Tears stream down Lion's face as he cries out that he can never perform magic the way Sylvia does.
Sylvia comforts the sobbing prince, privately noting that 3 days of failure have taken a massive toll on his confidence.
She recalls that Lion identifies his magic as fire, but she senses that his real obstacle is a deep-seated fear of magic itself.
Worrying about his upcoming debut, Sylvia resolves that she must take drastic action to help the boy succeed. Under the glow of a crescent moon, Sylvia stands alone before a pair of massive, ornate golden doors.
Sylvia arrives at the Grand Duke's private chambers, her expression filled with resolve for the task ahead.
Sylvia reflects that only the Grand Duke can offer the help she needs for Lion. She panics over the extreme urgency of the situation. Sylvia gathers her courage to proceed.
Lileel boasts of her superior royal bloodline while expressing her deep disgust for everyone else.
Sylvia considers the Grand Duke's mother and her reputation for being of low social birth. Willilhart's military achievements finally earned him the respect he was denied during his youth. Sylvia feels a deep sense of sympathy. She decides that waiting will solve nothing.
Sylvia loudly announces her presence at the door.
Willilhart reacts with surprise to the interruption.
A sudden heavy creak sounding as Sylvia enters the room and apologizes for the intrusion. Willilhart stands before her, half-dressed and soaking wet from his bath. Sylvia is mortified to find him nearly naked while he acknowledges her arrival. The Grand Duke asks what could possibly bring her there at such an hour. A dark-haired warrior stands amidst falling petals. Willilhart focuses his intense gaze on Sylvia. He repeats his question regarding her late-night visit. Sylvia offers a frantic and embarrassed apology.
She gasps in realization that he was in the middle of a bath.
Willilhart nonchalantly explains he just finished while Sylvia covers her blushing face. She feels completely overwhelmed by his physical presence. The Duke stares with a serious intensity.
Sylvia's internal panic reaches a breaking point.
She attempts to flee, claiming she will come back later to discuss Prince Lion. Willilhart halts her retreat with a sudden, quick pat sounding as he catches her hand. He notes her troubled expression and insists she stay to talk. The Grand Duke offers to listen to her concerns immediately rather than waiting. Delicate white blossoms fill the quiet room. Sylvia looks up at him with hope. Willilhart gently urges her to remain calm.
Sylvia's heart races as she tries to focus.
Sylvia demands he put on clothes immediately. Willilhart returns fully dressed and apologizes for making her wait.
He presents a cup of tea and asks if she can tank it.
Sylvia accepts the beverage with a polite word of thanks.
She feels a wave of exhaustion after finally catching her breath. Willilhart sits across from her and watches her every move. Red eyes glow with focused intent.
Narrative text describes Sylvia as an ordinary young lady who possesses great grace.
Memories flash of Sylvia's fierce inner strength as she protected Lion from an aggressive count.
She reaffirms her determination to protect the young prince from any further blame.
Willilhart remains captivated by her gentle gaze. A sudden wet sputter sounding as Sylvia chokes on the liquid. Sylvia coughs as she reveals the tea is far too bitter to drink. The Grand Duke looks completely baffled.
Sylvia is stunned as Willilhart recalls a sudden, heavy thud sounding while he dumped an entire box of tea leaves into the pot.
She laughs warmly and promises to brew him a better cup next time.
Willilhart's expression softens with deep interest.
He reflects on his reputation as a battle-maniac compared to her kindness.
Willilhart realizes that she is the only one who smiles at him without any fear.
Willilhart reflects on his dark impulses while stained in the blood of battle.
Sylvia calls out to the Grand Duke, snapping him back to the present. Willilhart acknowledges that he has wasted her time and asks about her concerns.
Sylvia explains that she has come to discuss Prince Lion's struggles with magic.
Willilhart suggests that the boy's inability to manifest magic results from deep trauma.
Sylvia waits with bated breath as the Grand Duke prepares to share more. A tragic flashback reveals that Lion once lost control and burned his own mother. Sylvia is struck with horror at the weight of the young prince's tragic past. Willilhart explains that the traumatized boy was sent to a cruel orphanage afterward. Observing her tea, Sylvia realizes Lion fears his own power out of intense guilt. Willilhart watches her closely, captivated by her deeply compassionate and empathetic nature.
Sylvia resolves to find the best way to support the prince's wounded heart.
Willilhart is privately moved, thinking to himself that she is truly strong and radiant. Sylvia decides to head back to her quarters and stands up to leave.
The Grand Duke observes that she looks just as exhausted as the prince.
Sylvia blushes at his unexpected concern, her expression softening in the dim light.
A wave of sudden dizziness washes over Sylvia as she tries to move.
She looks down at her hands and his feet, feeling her vision turn unsteady.
A sudden, sharp sounding as Sylvia stumbles and completely loses her balance.
Willilhart cries out her name in alarm as he reaches out to catch her. A sudden, heavy thud sounding as the pair falls to the ground together.
Sylvia realizes she has fallen onto the bed with the Duke over her.
Willilhart looms close, his expression a mix of intensity and focused worry.
He asks with urgency if she is all right after the accidental fall.
A sudden, quick rustle sounding as they settle into a highly compromising position. Sylvia is frozen in shock as she wonders how to handle this situation.
The atmosphere in the room becomes increasingly heavy as the silence persists.
Sylvia is overwhelmed by the sudden proximity amidst a flurry of falling blossoms. She panics internally, wondering how an accident could result in such a situation.
Her heart pounds frantically as she realizes the impact this has on her heart.
Willilhart concludes that she truly is unwell after seeing how red her face is. A sudden, soft pat sounding as he checks her forehead for a fever.
Sylvia lets out an embarrassed eek at his sudden and close touch. The Grand Duke murmurs her name as he keeps his hand on her forehead.
He asks if she is suffering from a fever in addition to her exhaustion. Willilhart abruptly realizes his mistake and pulls back with a frantic apology.
Sylvia shakily asks if he could please step away to give her space.
The Grand Duke looks flustered and quickly attempts to apologize for his actions.
Willilhart asks for her forgiveness as he moves to put some distance between them. The pair sits awkwardly on the edge of the bed in a flustered silence.
Sylvia offers a final polite apology for the trouble her dizziness has caused. Willilhart watches her intensely as she prepares to make her final exit.
Sylvia bids him a final farewell before making a quick and embarrassed retreat.
She glances back one last time as she prepares to leave the room.
Willilhart starts to say something but stops, hesitating for the first time. Narrative text notes that he has never shown such hesitation before this moment. He eventually settles for a soft and polite goodnight with Star. Sylvia blushes deeply as she responds to his gentle and unexpected parting words. A sudden light click sounding as the door to the chamber finally closes. Sylvia leans against the door in the hallway, overwhelmed by her racing heart.
Lion looks stunned while holding Lar.
Sylvia invites Lion to take a break and visit the town tomorrow. Lion eagerly accepts Sylvia's proposal to go to town.
Sylvia watches the boy with soft eyes.
Sylvia hopes Lion can enjoy life like a normal child for a while. Sylvia calls out to her maid Coco while walking Gamal. Sylvia asks Coco to act as their skilled escort to avoid unwanted attention. Coco listens to Sylvia's request with a neutral expression. Coco agrees to come but questions if someone else is more qualified. The conversation concludes as Coco questions her own suitability for the mission. Sylvia ponders Coco's modest reaction to the request. The group begins their journey into the city.
Lion shouts in amazement as he takes in the vibrant town scenery.
Lion points out delicious fruit and a necklace that he thinks Sylvia should wear.
Sylvia smiles, reflecting on the boy's long confinement within the palace walls.
She notes that the Grand Duke has joined them to serve as their personal guard.
Sylvia recalls the intimate bedfall and feels a wave of nervous tension. Willilhart explains he had other local duties and mentions Nicole will join them later. Lion excitedly calls for the attention of his caretakers. Lion leads the way, stating there is a specific place he wants to visit. The young prince giggles happily as he walks between his guardians.
He expresses his joy at the three of them spending time together.
Lion happily holds hands with Sylvia and Willilhart. The trio walks together through the sunlit time. Spies read orders to kidnap the child, undeterred by the presence of a Battle-Maniac. One of the mysterious men asks for their next course of action. The leader suggests they wait for the right moment among many options. The men discuss their permission to kill Sylvia if she interferes with the kidnapping. Unaware of the danger, the group continues their walk.
Sylvia asks if the building they have arrived at is a general store.
Sylvia notes Lion's sweet tooth as she considers his interests. She imagines him wanting to visit a bakery full of cakes and treats.
Lion urges the adults to hurry inside the store with him.
A light, soft chime sounding as the door opens. Sylvia gasps in surprise at the sight of the store's interior. Sylvia remarks on the incredible variety of goods available for purchase. Lion excitedly points towards something at the back of the store. Lion presents a music box, expressing his long-standing desire to try one.
Sylvia comments on the beautiful and elegant design of the music box.
Lion explains that he once saw a similar item in a shop window.
He recalls how the music from the window helped him through cold, hungry nights.
Lion admits he simply wanted to see a real music box up close.
The boy quickly rejects any gift, insisting that he doesn't need it. Sylvia realizes he isn't used to kindness and vows to buy it secretly. The Grand Duke watches them from the background.
3 ornate brooches sit inside a red velvet case.
Sylvia considers buying herself a birthday gift since she expects nothing from others. She feels a lingering hesitation about spending money on herself. Willilhart observes Sylvia's thoughtful expression from a distance.
The group enjoys a peaceful afternoon tea with cake.
The group continues to wander through various parts of the city as Prince Lion genuinely enjoys his newfound freedom.
Their shopping journey continues as the trio walks together through the sunlit town.
Sylvia blushes as she spots something unexpected while browsing the local shops.
The light blue-haired woman notes how adorable a certain outfit would look on Lion.
Sylvia addresses Willilhart and Lion as they continue their exploration of the marketplace.
She suggests stopping by a clothing store to continue their arting.
From the crowd, a pink-haired woman in a large bonnet observes the trio from a distance.
The pink-haired woman stops in surprise as she catches a glimpse of the group. The man with her asks what's wrong, and she explains she thought she saw Sylvia for a moment.
The brown-haired man, Rejection, dismisses the idea, noting Sylvia was taken to the imperial palace. In a comedic vision, the pink-haired woman insists on continuing her shopping spree, despite her companion's exhaustion.
Rejection sighs, finding her selfishness exhausting compared to Sylvia's understanding nature, which shocks the pink-haired woman. Ashley is outraged that Rejection is suddenly prioritizing and thinking about Sylvia. A sudden, sharp crack sounding as Ashley fumed with intense rage.
In the shop, Sylvia wonders why she is the one being forced to try on various outfits.
Lion and Willilhart encourage Sylvia to try on a dress and hat they've picked out for her. Sylvia recalls the multiple adorable outfits she had Lion try on earlier in the day.
She suggests they should focus on picking out more clothes for the young prince instead.
Lion adamantly refuses, insisting that he wants to pick out more clothes for Sylvia.
The boy presents a hat to her, while Willilhart agrees with the choice.
Willilhart compliments her elegance and admits he finds it surprisingly enjoyable to dress her up.
Sylvia blushes deeply at the Grand Duke's unexpected and direct praise. Willilhart reassures her that he will purchase every item she has tried on.
A man watches the group from the shadows, looking distressed by the scene.
A sudden, piercing scream sounding as the group is startled by a noise from outside.
Willilhart notes the disturbance and decides to go outside to investigate the source of the commotion.
A sudden, quick metallic sound echoing as Willilhart prepares to investigate. Sylvia gasps in shock, wondering what could be happening in the street.
A pack of vicious wolves with glowing red eyes begins attacking the townspeople.
Panic erupts as the mysterious wolves continue their assault on the crowd.
The wolves growl menacingly, showing their aggression with bared teeth and glowing eyes.
Sylvia realizes that something is fundamentally wrong with the behavior of these beasts. Lion points out an elderly woman in immediate danger from one of the wolves.
Sylvia is horrified by the sight and declares she must help the woman immediately. She prepares to cast a spell, though she worries if her magic can reach the woman at this distance.
Willilhart takes the shopping bags and tells her he will handle the situation.
A wolf lunges at the terrified elderly woman as she cowers on the ground.
Willilhart intercepts the beast, his eyes glowing with intensity as he wields his sword.
A sudden sharp slice sounding as the wolf is struck down.
Sylvia watches with a look of realization and relief.
Willilhart tells the survivor he will ensure everyone reaches safety while he can.
He shouts for the townspeople to retreat inside the buildings for protection. Sylvia urges Lion to get inside the building quickly as they move to safety.
A pink-haired woman pushes Sylvia aside while fleeing with her companion.
A sudden, heavy slam sounding as Sylvia is shoved by the passing pair.
Sylvia recognizes the fleeing couple as Ashley and Rejection.
Rejection questions if Ashley just pushed Sylvia aside in her haste to escape.
Ashley mocks him, reminding him he claimed Sylvia wouldn't be here. Rejection looks back in confusion while Ashley smiles with a malicious intent.
Ashley confirms her suspicion and maliciously hopes Sylvia is mauled by the wild beasts outside.
Desperate hands grip the door handles. Sylvia realizes the door is locked from the inside and decides she must find another safe place for Leon. Sylvia stares in stunned, wide-eyed horror. She finds a discarded hat and gasps out a confused question. Sylvia realizes with terror that Leon is gone.
A sudden growl sounding as Willilhart struggles against the immense strength of a vicious wolf. His eyes glow red with intense realization.
He concludes that the creature has been magically enhanced to increase its physical strength.
A sudden whistle sounding as daggers strike the wolf from a distance. Willilhart reacts with a look of surprise. Kokoro arrives holding daggers and apologizes for the delay.
Willilhart recognizes the maid as she arrives.
Kokoru explains that she changed clothes quickly to save time before joining the battle.
She warns the Grand Duke about the extraordinary strength and regenerative powers of the enchanted creatures.
Willilhart resolves to finish the fight quickly and ensure the safety of Sylvia and Leon.
A man kidnaps the blonde child and tells him to behave.
The kidnappers discuss their plan and note how easily they capture the child using the distractions.
The captor dismisses the suffering of the townspeople as unimportant compared to their mission.
A sudden crunch sounding as Leon bites the man's hand.
The man screams in pain while Leon escapes, labeling his kidnappers as villains.
Leon desperately tries to escape while the kidnapper curses at him from behind.
The villain reaches for the child.
A sudden blast sounding as magic protects Leon.
The magical explosion shocks the men who wonder what happened.
Sylvia concentrates to channel her magical energy.
Sylvia and Leon call out to each other in relief as they reunite. A sudden thud sounding as Leon trips and falls.
Sylvia checks on the boy while another man watches from the background.
Sylvia realizes they are being attacked again as the man draws a knife.
The kidnapper lunges forward, vowing to kill both the woman and the child instantly.
Sylvia pulls Leon into a protective hug, determined to shield him.
A sudden spray sounding as blood splatters across the scene.
Sylvia gasps as she realizes someone else was struck.
Willilhart takes the knife meant for Sylvia in his own arm.
Sylvia cries out for the Grand Duke in shock.
Willilhart glares fiercely at his attacker.
Sylvia screams for her protector while blood drips from the knife in his arm.
A sudden slice sounding as Willilhart strikes his heir.
The man collapses while Willilhart stands with the knife still in his arm.
Willilhart casually remarks on the difficulty of using a sword in such a narrow alley.
Sylvia frantically urges the Grand Duke to treat his wound for his own safety.
Willilhart dismisses the injury as minor and intends to simply stop the bleeding.
The kidnapper reveals that the knife was coated in a lethal poison given by his master. He mocks Willilhart, claiming the lethal poison leaves him with no chance to survive.
Willilhart throws the knife back at the villain, silencing his mockery with a final blow.
Sylvia rushes to support the faltering man, pleading with him to hold on.
She determines that she must act quickly to neutralize the lethal poison in his system.
Kokoru arrives and calls out to her companions as they huddle on the ground. Sylvia alerts the maid to the dire situation, explaining that the Grand Duke has been poisoned.
Kokoru looks down at her master and states that they must treat him immediately.
Kokoru urges Sylvia and Leon to find safety while she summons the medical team, and Sylvia agrees.
Sylvia desperately calls out to Leon, ordering him to come with her immediately.
Leon's eyes glow pink as he cowers on the ground, overwhelmed by the fear of anyone else dying, while Sylvia watches him with growing concern.
The boy's distress peaks as he cries out in absolute denial.
A massive pillar of magical fire erupts around Leon as Sylvia shields herself from the intense heat.
Sylvia realizes that Leon's magic has spiraled out of control because he feels responsible for the tragedy and fears losing someone else.
Leon screams his refusal of the situation while engulfed in his own runaway magic.
Sylvia remembers the Grand Duke's explanation about Leon's deep-seated guilt over his mother's death. She concludes that the sight of the poisoned Willilhart has triggered Leon's trauma, causing him to lose all control.
Sylvia shouts to the boy, pleading with him to listen to her through the flames.
Standing before the fire, Sylvia firmly declares that neither Willilhart's injury nor his mother's death were ever his fault.
Leon's eyes widen in shock as the silver-haired woman insists he did nothing wrong.
Sylvia continues to offer reassurance, telling him there is absolutely nothing left to fear.
Kokoru reaches out in alarm as Sylvia moves closer to the dangerous magic. The maid shouts a warning, fearing for the silver-haired woman's safety despite the low temperature of the magical flames.
Sylvia pulls Leon into a protective embrace, promising to shield him from everything.
Leon's eyes return to normal as he softly vows to protect her as well.
A peaceful aura of falling petals surrounds the pair as the boy finds comfort in her arms. Sylvia sighs with relief as the boy finally calms down.
The two women agree that they must pivot immediately to saving the Grand Duke's life. Sylvia watches with a prayer in her heart as Willilhart is rushed toward medical care. The scene shifts to a grand, moonlit bedroom where the group gathers to tend to the patient.
Willilhart lies unconscious and pale, beads of sweat forming from the lethal poison.
Sylvia asks Kokoru if the poison has been successfully neutralized.
Kokoru holds up a vial, explaining that the medicine has not fully worked yet.
The maid suggests that the most effective way to administer the remaining medicine is through mouth-to-mouth contact, shocking Sylvia.
Kokoru claims she only views the Duke as a difficult boss, leaving a flustered Sylvia to reject the idea of the maid doing it.
Sylvia resolutely decides to deliver the medicine herself, blushing as she takes the bottle. The silver-haired woman drinks the sparkling liquid to prepare for the delivery. Sylvia leans over the unconscious man, her heart racing as she closes the distance. Sylvia leans down to deliver the medicine through a gentle kiss. An illustration of a black-haired swordsman and a brown-haired girl appears. Surrounded by glowing roses, Sylvia continues to lean over the sleeping Grand Duke. She focuses on the single thought that this action is necessary to save his life. Sylvia presses her lips to his once more to ensure the medicine is delivered.
The intimate delivery continues as the magical medicine transfers between them.
Willilhart groans softly as he begins to stir from his deep slumber.
His eyes snap open, glowing with a faint red intensity as he regains his senses.
Kokoro informs the Duke that he lost consciousness shortly after being poisoned.
The maid bluntly explains that Sylvia had to administer the medicine through her own mouth.
Sylvia panics and tries to silence the maid, while Willilhart looks on in confusion.
Willilhart touches his lips, processing the realization of what occurred while he was out.
The Grand Duke gazes at the silver-haired woman and softly speaks her name.
Sylvia looks at him with a wide-eyed, startled expression.
Willilhart apologizes for causing her so much trouble during the attack.
He admits with a small smile that he always seems to be getting saved by her.
Sylvia blushes furiously and reminds him that he was the one who saved her first.
A sudden, heavy stomp sounding as someone enters the room. Leon bursts into the bedchamber, shouting Willilhart's name in distress.
The young boy rushes toward the bedside to see the recovered man for himself.
Willilhart gazes warmly at his companion and expresses relief that she is safe while offering an apology for the ordeal.
Leon begins to weep, tearfully claiming that everything happened because of his own mistake.
The young boy suddenly lunges forward to bury his face against Willilhart's chest in a desperate, sobbing hug. Willilhart looks down with an apologetic expression as Leon cries out that the man almost died because of him.
Willilhart becomes flustered and tries to reassure the boy that his injury is not a significant problem. Sylvia places a comforting hand on the boy's back and softly speaks his name.
The silver-haired woman offers a gentle, reassuring smile to the distraught child.
Looking into Leon's eyes, Sylvia firmly insists that none of what happened was ever his fault.
Leon looks up in surprise, stammering Sylvia's name as he feels her supportive presence.
Sylvia continues to smile kindly and tells him that he no longer needs to worry about the past. She holds Leon's hands and suggests that his mother would have wanted him to keep smiling above all else.
Sylvia gently wipes away the boy's tears with her thumb. Leon beams with joy and declares he is fine now because Sylvia will always be by his side.
Sylvia smiles back at him and confirms her commitment to stay with him.
Willilhart and Kokoro share a quiet moment of relief as they watch the pair reconcile.
The touching moment is interrupted by a sudden, loud grumble sounding from Leon's hungry stomach.
The young boy blushes a deep red in embarrassment after his stomach betrays him.
Sylvia chuckles and suggests that they should all head to the dining hall together for a meal. Sylvia turns back to address the Grand Duke with a respectful tone.
She expresses her hope for his swift recovery and pleads with him not to push himself so hard in the future.
As she leads Leon away, Sylvia leaves the rest of the tasks to Kokoro, who acknowledges the request.
Kokoro watches them go with a contemplative and serious expression.
The maid advises the Duke to proceed carefully because she is worried, prompting him to ask what she means.
Kokoro hesitates for a moment as her expression darkens. She reflects on the coordinated nature of the beasts and the assassin, concluding that someone must be pulling the strings.
Willilhart's eyes flash with a dangerous intensity as he asks about the status of the interrogation.
Kokoro calmly informs him that the culprits have already been apprehended. Willilhart settles back and grimly states that they are currently handling the investigation.
A thin sliver of light marks the passage of time.
Sylvia and Leon stand together in a large, open courtyard under a clear sky.
Leon successfully channels a burst of fire magic, leading an impressed Sylvia to praise his amazing progress.
Sylvia claps her hands together and tells the boy that he has already mastered the use of his magic.
Leon looks back with newfound confidence and vows that he will never run away from challenges again.
Sylvia watches him with pride, noting how much he has grown since overcoming his past trauma.
She muses that Leon might be a genius and realizes his royal heritage is truly shining through.
Sylvia catches herself blushing, realizing she is starting to think like an over-doting parent.
Leon approaches her with a shy expression and calls her name to get her attention.
He explains that since he can now use magic, he has a special request he wants to make.
Sylvia looks at the boy curiously, wondering what kind of request he could have.
A beautifully decorated white music box sits surrounded by a wreath of flowers.
Sylvia is struck by a sudden wave of panic, fearing he might say he doesn't want to be the emperor.
While Sylvia internally struggles with respecting his wishes, Leon nervously begins to speak his mind. The boy looks up with wide, shimmering eyes and a hopeful expression.
Leon remains silent for a heartbeat, gathering his courage.
Sylvia waits with bated breath, marked by a sudden nervous gulp sounding in the quiet air.
Leon blushes furiously and shouts his wish to call Sylvia mother just this once. Sylvia is completely stunned into silence by the boy's unexpected request.
Leon shyly explains that he already considers her family, which is why he felt the urge to call her that.
Sylvia looks down at him with a complex mix of happiness and hesitation.
She eventually softens, deciding that it is a modest and sweet request for him to make. Leon blushes with glowing pink eyes.
Sylvia asks if he only wants to make this request once.
Leon enthusiastically agrees as the silver-haired woman smiles.
Sylvia is completely overwhelmed by the boy's brilliant joy.
Leon shares his plan to call the Duke father, catching Sylvia off guard.
Sylvia imagines the Duke's reaction to the boy's request.
Sylvia panics at the romantic implications of their family roles.
The boy asks why her face is suddenly flushing. Sylvia resolves to focus on the task at hand.
Sylvia emphasizes the urgency of their magical preparations.
Leon shows his determination for the performance.
Sylvia promises the boy a reward for their success.
Guests at the banquet discuss the boy's arrival and resemblance to the emperor.
Guests remark on the boy's talents and their views on magic.
A noble hints at Lady Lilybell's potential candidacy for the throne.
Fancy footwear walks across a decorative rug.
The trio arrives together in regal attire.
The crowd reacts to the Duke's rare personal escort.
Sylvia looks around the crowded ballroom.
Sylvia suggests she should have arrived at the party alone. Sylvia fears she is making a poor impression on the nobility.
Willilhart gazes down at his companion.
Willilhart offers a brief word of quiet reassurance.
The Duke tells her to hold her head high.
He leans in to whisper close to her.
Willilhart provides instructions on how to handle inquiries about her identity.
Sylvia is flustered by the man's close proximity.
Willilhart maintains a stern and regal composure.
Sylvia is lost in her own thoughts. Sylvia is hit by the memory of their intimate kiss. Sylvia frets over Leon treating them like a married couple. Sylvia observes Leon's successful attempt to control his nerves.
Willilhart announces the next step of the royal ceremony.
The Duke gives Sylvia leave to enjoy the gala.
Leon asks for her support during his upcoming display.
Sylvia reassures the boy of his great capability.
Sylvia identifies her primary adversary at the event.
Leon's past abduction by the assassin is remembered.
The prisoner's death prevented any further questioning or confession.
Willilhart ponders the dark motives and brutality behind the attack.
Lady Lileel gazes coldly over her wine. Lileel laments the failure of her assassins and her cleanup efforts. Lileel outlines her political strategy for the upcoming succession.
The woman resents Leon for disrupting her son's path to power.
She watches the happy child with silent malice. Lileel views the boy's public success as a threat to her agenda.
She resolves to sabotage the boy's magical demonstration.
Sylvia stands alone amidst the noble crowd.
Sylvia decides to refresh herself with a drink.
A voice from the past calls out to the woman. Sylvia freezes as she hears a familiar voice calling out to her.
A pink-haired woman named Ashley looks surprised to see Sylvia and declares how happy she is to meet her.
The scene shifts through several hazy, fragmented memories.
The silver-haired woman turns to see who is addressing her by name.
Sylvia's eyes widen in shock as she recognizes the speaker's voice.
Ashley smiles broadly and tells Sylvia that it really is her, repeating how happy she is to see her.
Ashley claps her hands together and remarks that it has been a long time since they last met.
Sylvia looks at the pink-haired woman and realizes that Ashley has not changed at all. Sylvia recalls their encounter in the city when a pack of stray dogs was rampaging through the streets.
Sylvia vividly remembers being heartlessly pushed away by the woman during that chaotic event.
A sudden, sharp thud sounds as Ashley shoves Sylvia out of her way in the past.
Sylvia reflects on how that specific moment of being pushed aside later put young Leon in grave danger.
Ashley feigns innocence and claims she has not been to the city, suggesting Sylvia must be mistaken.
Ashley turns to a brown-haired man named Rosian for confirmation, leaving him looking bewildered.
Rosian stammers a nervous agreement while his face flushes red as he gazes at Sylvia.
Sylvia stands with quiet and regal grace. Rosian's heart skips a quick, nervous beat.
Rosian gazes at Sylvia and thinks to himself that she has become even more beautiful.
The man wonders if Sylvia was always this pretty in the past. Ashley interrupts the silence and asks Sylvia how she has been doing lately.
Ashley hides a sinister smile and claims she was worried that Sylvia might be in some kind of trouble.
Ashley internally mocks the girl, referring to her as the same old plain Sylvia.
Sylvia stares back with silent, intense disbelief.
Ashley remembers Sylvia as someone who was always pushed aside and never anyone's first priority.
Ashley leans in close to whisper a question about whether Sylvia finds her current life to be a heavy burden.
Sylvia pulls away and firmly declares that her life is no longer as it once was. Sylvia thinks of Leon and Willilhart, realizing she now has people who truly consider her their priority.
Ashley is taken aback and wonders what has caused Sylvia to change so much.
Ashley lets out a quiet, annoyed tsk. Distant guests notice the silver-haired woman speaking with Lady Ashley. The crowd praises Ashley's beauty as the fairy lady while she smiles maliciously to herself.
Ashley determines that she is the only one who deserves to be given top priority.
Sylvia notes that being near Ashley only makes her stand out and draw more unwanted attention.
Sylvia clenches her hands as she worries about Leon's well-being elsewhere in the gala.
Sylvia announces her departure, but Rosian suddenly tries to stop her from leaving.
Her attention is caught by a sudden, firm grab sounding as he takes her wrist. Sylvia demands he let go, reminding him that she already told him not to touch her so carelessly. Rosian pleads with her not to be cold and claims he is her fiancé, leaving Sylvia completely confused. Rosian grits his teeth in silent frustration.
Rosian shouts that he refuses to acknowledge the end of their relationship as Sylvia cries out in pain.
A sudden, heavy tap sounds as a hand lands firmly on Rosian's shoulder. Rosian's expression shifts to pure terror as he realizes who has approached them.
Willilhart glares at the man and asks if he is the ex-fiancé who is still persistently bothering Sylvia. Rosian lets out a sharp, pained groan. Willilhart rests a hand on his sword and threatens to turn the man into a lump of meat. Willilhart holds a cold blade against Rosian's throat while the terrified man stammers in fear.
Rosian flees in a panic as Ashley watches him go and begs him not to leave her behind.
Ashley grits her teeth and resolves to let Sylvia be happy only for the time being. Ashley vows to remind Sylvia exactly where she stands in society very soon.
Willilhart looks at his companion with genuine concern and asks if her arm is all right.
Sylvia apologizes to her companion for her vulnerability while reflecting on the pain of seeing her past tormentors together. Sylvia is haunted by fragmented memories of being heartlessly rejected by her former fiancé in favor of Ashley.
Willilhart maintains a steady and regal presence beside her.
Sylvia notices the beginning of the dance music echoing through the hall.
A faint, thoughtful smile touches the silver-haired woman's face.
Willilhart notices her interest and asks if she enjoys dancing, catching her off guard.
Sylvia admits she does not dislike it, prompting the Duke to prepare a request. The pair stands together in the center of the grand, sunlit ballroom.
Willilhart bows elegantly and asks for the honor of a dance.
The scene shifts momentarily as the evening's festivities continue to unfold.
Willilhart repeats his sincere invitation to share a dance.
The Duke waits for her response with a subtle, nervous blush on his face. A sudden, quick flutter sounding in her heart as Sylvia wonders if he is making this effort solely for her.
Sylvia looks down with a complex expression, struggling with her lingering insecurities.
A sudden, heavy thump sounding in his chest as the Duke waits anxiously for her answer.
Sylvia gazes at him with a soft and newfound resolve.
Sylvia accepts the invitation, suggesting they share a single dance together.
The two begin to move across the ballroom floor as flower petals drift around them. Guests are shocked to see the formidable Duke dancing with such poise and grace.
The crowd remarks on how lovely the couple looks despite the Duke's fearsome reputation.
Sylvia compliments his skill, admitting she is surprised by how well he dances.
Willilhart looks down at her with a serious and focused gaze.
Willilhart explains he learned to dance out of necessity to avoid being looked down upon as a low-ranking royal child.
Sylvia's eyes widen in sympathy as she listens to his story of childhood neglect.
Sylvia realizes the Duke has suffered the same pain of being pushed aside that she has endured.
Sylvia admires his strength and realizes she truly likes the person he has become.
Sylvia is suddenly jolted by a sharp gasp of surprise.
A sudden, quick stumble sounding as Sylvia's foot slips during a turn.
Sylvia cries out in shock as she begins to lose her balance.
Willilhart warns her to watch out as his hand moves to heir.
The two find themselves frozen in an extremely close and intimate embrace.
Tension crackles between them as their faces draw inches apart.
They complete a dramatic dip in the center of the ballroom as guests watch in awe.
Sylvia's face flushes a deep red from the overwhelming proximity. Sylvia pulls away and stammers an apology for her sudden clumsiness.
The audience applauds enthusiastically, praising the Duke's unexpected talent for dancing.
Sylvia hopes her support has helped his reputation while the Duke hides his own embarrassment.
Sylvia's eyes shimmer with a sudden, urgent thought.
Sylvia remembers that she must return to Leon's side for his upcoming performance.
Young Leon sits on a grand throne, looking hopeful and bright.
The boy smiles contentedly, feeling a sense of peace before his big moment.
Leon clenches his fists and determines that he will succeed in his magic performance.
Lady Lileel appears behind him with a cold and menacing greeting.
Leon is visibly shaken by the woman's sudden and sinister presence.
Lileel mocks his pale expression, claiming he looks like he has seen a ghost. The woman questions if he will truly be able to maintain his composure in front of the crowd.
A sudden tight squeeze sounding as Leon grips his sleeves and insists he will be fine.
Lileel leans in to deliver a cruel and calculated whisper.
The woman maliciously claims that Leon was the one who burned his own mother long ago. She emphasizes that the tragedy happened solely because of him.
Lileel leans in and cruelly asks Leon if his mother died because of him.
The lavender-haired woman declares how much of a curse the boy truly is.
Lileel mockingly asks if he is prepared to fail his performance once again.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounding as Leon clutches his chest in a panic.
A sudden, quick gasp sounding as Leon trembles under the woman's malicious gaze.
Lileel stands proudly while the boy remains frozen and distraught in the background.
An announcer introduces Leon to the noble guests as the child of the emperor.
Leon sits nervously on a grand throne while the gathered crowd watches him expectantly. Guests whisper in anticipation, wondering what kind of magic the young prince will demonstrate.
Sylvia looks at her companion and hopes Leon will be all right after his practice.
An attendant bows respectfully and requests that the boy begin his magical performance.
Willilhart watches the stage with a stern and highly focused expression. Willilhart notes that the boy looks strange, leaving Sylvia confused and deeply worried.
A sudden, loud gasp sounding as Sylvia realizes something is terribly wrong with Leon.
Leon is paralyzed by fear as dark magical energy swirls around his feet.
The boy remains frozen in place while the audience watches him in silent expectation.
Sylvia worries that Leon is being consumed by his past traumatic memories.
Sylvia recalls Leon's childhood trauma while Lileel watches his struggle with wicked delight.
The narrative shifts through a series title transition as the scene intensifies.
Willilhart looks at his companion and suggests stopping the performance to help the boy.
Sylvia rejects the idea, fearing the emperor is watching and would see a failure.
Sylvia asks the Duke to stand in a way that hides her hands from him.
Willilhart looks at her and asks if she has a plan to intervene.
Sylvia looks toward the stage with a focused and determined gaze.
Sylvia explains her plan to use wind magic to contact Leon secretly, surprising Willilhart.
Willilhart watches the silver-haired woman with a look of intense and silent curiosity.
A sudden, soft whir sounding as Sylvia focuses her magical energy toward the boy.
Leon is haunted by memories of fire and the fear of hurting others again.
Leon is startled as he hears a familiar voice calling his name through the wind.
The boy realizes that the magical wind has carried Sylvia's comforting voice to him.
Leon looks up with tears in his eyes, feeling the silver-haired woman's support.
Sylvia's spirit appears to embrace Leon, promising to always stay by his side. A sudden, bright shimmer sounding as golden magic begins to gather in Leon's hands.
Leon releases a powerful and brilliant burst of magic that illuminates the entire ballroom.
Sylvia watches with a joyful smile, celebrating that the boy is finally using his magic. Willilhart and Sylvia watch as magical flames dance harmlessly throughout the grand hall.
Guests cry out in alarm, fearing they might be burned by the sudden fire.
Willilhart explains the magic requires high control and assures the crowd the flames are safe.
Guests touch the magical fire and find that it is not hot at all.
Sylvia realizes Willilhart intentionally showed the crowd the fire was safe to support Leon.
Sylvia reflects on Leon's hard work to master a protective flame that does not hurt. Sylvia thinks of how this kind-hearted magic perfectly suits the young boy's nature. A sudden bright flash sounding as golden light fills the high ballroom ceiling.
A sudden heavy pant sounding as Leon stands breathless after completing his magic demonstration.
A sudden loud clap sounding as the crowd praises Leon as the Emperor's child.
Leon looks at his hands in disbelief, wondering if he truly succeeded.
Lileel grits her teeth and hides her fury behind her decorative fan.
The lavender-haired woman watches the boy's triumph with a look of silent, intense malice.
Lileel resolves to let the boy be happy only for the time being.
A sudden, quick tap sounding as Leon runs towards Sylvia and calls her name.
Sylvia embraces Leon warmly amidst a flurry of white flowers. Leon joyfully credits his success to the support of his companions.
Sylvia praises the young prince for his incredible hard work and dedication.
Sylvia reaches into her bag to retrieve a special item. Sylvia presents a glowing and beautifully wrapped gift to Leon.
Leon stares at the mysterious present with wide, sparkling eyes.
The golden-haired boy is overcome with pure and radiant happiness.
Leon holds a round golden clock and offers his sincere thanks. Leon proudly shows his new gift to a smiling Willilhart and Sylvia.
Willilhart watches the scene with a serious and contemplative gaze.
Sylvia is caught off guard by a sudden and intense realization. Willilhart presents a stunning blue gemstone brooch resting in his palm.
Willilhart offers the brooch to Sylvia, claiming it suits her perfectly.
Sylvia is touched, realizing he remembered her interest in the general store.
Sylvia recalls the pain of past birthdays that were never celebrated.
Sylvia reflects on how she has finally received a gift intended for her. Sylvia thanks him warmly and promises to cherish the gift forever.
Willilhart prepares to ask for something personal in return.
Willilhart asks if she would consider calling him by his name. The Duke waits for her response with a subtle, nervous blush.
Sylvia shyly tests out his name with a soft and surprised expression.
Willilhart confirms her words with a warm and gentle smile. Leon laughs joyfully as the group shares a light-hearted moment together.
Leon expresses his deep love and happiness that they all get along.
Leon declares that Sylvia is the first person to ever prioritize him. Sylvia reflects on how she is no longer the one being sidelined. A sudden, quick squeeze sounding as Sylvia holds her brooch to her chest.
Sylvia realizes she has finally found a place where she truly belongs.
Official documents mention an upcoming engagement with an allied country.
A red-haired royal reviews a list of candidates to be his wife. The man looks at a photograph of the pink-haired Ashley. The red-haired royal dismisses the paperwork with a bored and tired sigh. The man points toward a photo of Sylvia, declaring his preference.
A week passes as Leon's reputation as the Emperor's child grows.
Sylvia touches the blue brooch at her throat with a thoughtful look. Sylvia blushes intensely over the rumors of an engagement with Willilhart. Sylvia recalls the intimate moment Willilhart asked her to use his name. Sylvia decides she must officially deny the rumors to avoid causing trouble. Sylvia is startled by a sudden, quick tap sounding as someone approaches. Leon waves excitedly while wearing a new and regal outfit.
Sylvia greets the young prince with a bright and happy smile.
Leon explains he was looking for her before his important audience.
Leon proudly shows off his clothes, crediting Kokal for the help. Sylvia compliments the boy, calling him very elegant and lovely. Leon looks down and fidgets nervously with his floral collar pen.
Leon wonders if his father will finally offer him praise this time.
The Emperor's grand bed stands empty and silent behind ornate curtains. Sylvia sadly notes that Leon hasn't been allowed to see his father. Sylvia comforts the anxious boy with a gentle hand on his head.
Sylvia takes Leon's hands in hers and offers him encouraging words.
Sylvia blushes while lost in thought. Leon blushes and offers a quick affirmative response. A sudden hacking cough sounding as the lavender-haired Emperor stains his palm with blood.
Bilbard stares at his blood-stained hand and realizes his time is finally running out.
He reflects on how Leon, the son Milia gave birth to, will succeed him, admitting he treated the boy as a mere afterthought.
Faced with his mortality, the man regrets the heartless things he said in the past.
The Emperor wonders when he became so cold-hearted while lying weakly in his bed.
Bilbard thinks of Milia and regrets that he has only spoken to Leon once so far. He acknowledges that the young prince even managed to pass the difficult exam he had prepared. A sense of quiet anticipation builds for their next inevitable meeting. The Emperor decides that he must finally praise and acknowledge Leon when they see each other again.
Lileel enters the room with a sharp greeting, addressing the ailing Bilbard as her brother.
A sudden, tight squeeze sounding as Bilbard grips his sheets while Lileel requests a private conversation. The maids offer a polite bow and exit the room at the lady's command. Lileel asks how he is feeling, mentioning she heard reports that he had collapsed again. She feigns deep concern, but Bilbard dismisses her, telling her there is no need to worry. The lavender-haired man remains silent and visibly strained by his sister's presence. Lileel hides a malicious look behind her fan and offers a hollow expression of relief. She urges him not to push himself too hard while maintaining her elegant, deceptive facade. Internally, the woman argues that it is far too soon to recognize Leon as the rightful heir to the throne. Bilbard questions her stance, noting that Leon showed great potential during his recent magic presentation. Lileel firmly rejects his assessment with a sudden, sharp snap sounding as she closes her fan. She claims Leon is an immature fledgling who requires harsher trials before being accepted by the royal family. The woman fears that Bilbard is on the verge of officially passing the crown to Leon. Lileel is consumed by fury, realizing her plans and her own son's future are at stake if Leon is recognized. Sylvia notices the young prince is becoming visibly tense as they move through the hallway. Leon walks with his head down, clutching his hands together in a nervous habit. Sylvia observes that the boy's expression is becoming increasingly strained with every step they take. The silver-haired woman closes her eyes and prays that everything will go smoothly for the prince. Sylvia walks beside the Duke, her mind preoccupied with the upcoming audience with the Emperor. Leon suddenly shouts a warning for Sylvia to watch out as she loses her footing. Sylvia gasps in surprise, looking over her shoulder as she begins to trek. A sudden, firm grasp sounding as a hand catches Sylvia before she can fall. Willilhart catches the silver-haired woman in a protective embrace, holding her steady. Sylvia blushes intensely as she finds herself inches away from the Duke's focused gaze. Willilhart offers a sincere apology and asks if she is all right while she stares at him in a daze. The Duke continues to hold Sylvia close as the group pauses in the grand palace hallway. A sudden, quick flutter sounding as Sylvia flusteredly explains she simply wasn't paying attention. Willilhart insists her well-being is precious, while Leon looks on with an impatient and jealous expression. Leon asks if Willilhart will be joining them for the audience at the Emperor's chambers. Willilhart notes the Emperor must be busy, but Leon assures them that he doesn't mind the company. The Duke suggests they all go together, much to the young prince's delight. Willilhart's gaze lingers on Sylvia with a look of quiet intensity. Sylvia remains flustered and blushing after their intimate encounter.
Willilhart reminds her of her previous promise to start calling him by his first name.
Sylvia's breath hitches as she realizes he is holding her to her word. The Duke reaches out and gently touches the blue brooch he gifted to the silver-haired woman.
A sudden heavy thump sounding as Willilhart whispers that the brooch suits her well, leaving her stunned.
The black-haired man turns away with a faint, satisfied smile.
Leon curiously asks what they were discussing, and Willilhart simply repeats his compliment about the brooch.
Sylvia blushes intensely while privately thinking she is bound to get her hopes up after all.
The silver-haired woman's expression suddenly shifts to one of wide-eyed shock.
Leon looks up with a worried face, wondering if he must face yet another trial.
Bilbard lies weakly in his bed and announces the upcoming arrival of royal envoys for a negotiated alliance.
The ailing emperor decides to entrust the responsibility of hosting the guests to Leon and his attendant.
Sylvia and the young prince are both stunned by the weight of this sudden and daunting task. Willilhart notes the magnitude of the responsibility, while Sylvia questions the reason for such a sudden request.
The lavender-haired man gazes forward with a tired but steady eye. Bilbard reveals that the hosting task was actually a proposal suggested by his sister.
Sylvia is horrified to realize that Lileel is behind this difficult arrangement. The Emperor explains that Leon must establish a friendly relationship with the envoy and negotiate to their advantage. Bilbard warns that failing this mission will result in Leon not being acknowledged as the heir.
The man adds that he will also dismiss the attendant if the negotiations do not go well.
Sylvia panics, imagining herself unemployed or even imprisoned for disrespecting foreign royalty.
Ashley looks on with a determined expression, while below, Leon's hand grips Sylvia's dress with a trembling and desperate strength.
Sylvia stares back at the boy with a look of deep concern and realization.
Leon looks down in despair as the silver-haired woman speaks his name softly.
Willilhart asked the Emperor if his sister's proposal also included the harsh conditions for failure.
Bilbard remains silent and turns away, ending the conversation without further explanation.
The Emperor dismisses everyone, ordering them to leave his chambers immediately.
Sylvia stands outside the palace fountain, unable to believe how quickly the situation has escalated.
The group gathers by the water as Sylvia reflects on the overwhelming speed of recent events.
Leon continues to look down, his heart heavy with the lack of fatherly approval. The boy laments that his father didn't praise him, leaving Sylvia feeling his profound sadness.
Willilhart suggests that the Emperor's cold behavior was likely influenced by Lilibel's interference.
Lileel smiles maliciously, thinking that her brother cannot be assertive with that particular person.
Willilhart tries to comfort Prince Leon by telling him not to let the situation trouble him. The young boy's eyes widen with a glimmer of hope as he asks if that is true. Sylvia resolves to work harder so that no one can ever question the results of their efforts. Internally, Sylvia screams that her own neck is on the line and she refuses to be dismissed.
Sylvia begins to study the documents, determined to learn everything about the upcoming guests.
Records describe the Kingdom of Hetoria as an island nation famous for its weapon manufacturing.
The documents note that the kingdom practices polygamy and the alliance would end a long-standing stalemate.
The upcoming envoys are identified as the red-haired 4th prince and the 5th princess of Hetoria. Sylvia reviews the files with a focused and analytical gaze.
Leon's mood brightens as he shares a lighthearted moment with the smiling silver-haired woman.
The papers mention that the 4th prince is seeking an engagement with a noblewoman from this country.
Sylvia's eyes widen as she comes across a shocking detail in the files.
The silver-haired woman looks at the paperwork with an expression of pure disbelief.
Willilhart notices her reaction and asks her what is wrong.
Sylvia gasps out a question, her face pale with shock.
She stares at a list of marriage candidates that features her own portrait and name. Sylvia is stunned to find her own name among the potential wives for the foreign prince.
Elsewhere, the pink-haired Ashley sits elegantly on a sofa while reading the same document.
Ashley blushes and giggles to herself, seemingly pleased with the news.
She reflects on how handsome the 4th prince looks in his profile and considers him a good partner. Ashley hopes this new prince will adore her more than Rosian, who has been ignoring her.
The girl smiles greedily, thinking of the wealth associated with the Kingdom of Hetoria.
Ashley tells her maids about the other candidates on the list for the prince's hand. The pink-haired girl smiles with a sinister edge, wondering which noble lady is considered the most charming. The pink-haired girl's maids cheer, insisting no other lady could possibly be a match for her. Ashley laughs with delight as she reads the news in her documents. She notices Sylvia's name on the list, but dismisses her as no threat to her own chances.
A sudden low snicker sounding as Ashley hides a malicious smile behind her paperwork.
The pink-haired girl finds the situation increasingly interesting, her expression becoming greedy and intense. Elsewhere, Sylvia is horrified to find her own portrait on the list of marriage candidates.
Willilhart looks at the document with a suspicious and calculating eye.
A sudden tight squeeze sounding as Sylvia grips her dress, wondering why she was selected.
Sylvia realizes this must be a cold, calculated move by her father. A sudden, gentle touch sounding as Willilhart asks the silver-haired woman if she is all right. Leon steps forward with a blush, promising to help her if anything goes wrong.
Willilhart expresses his disapproval of ignoring a daughter's wishes in such a despicable way.
The Duke offers to accompany Sylvia if she decides to return home to protest.
Sylvia is visibly moved by Willilhart's sincere and protective offer of support.
She reflects that letting her father have his way would only lead back to her previous miserable life.
Sylvia decides to send a formal written protest to her family for the time being.
A sudden, light sigh sounding as Sylvia shrugs off the overwhelming news and regains her composure.
She encourages Leon to stay focused on the difficult trial they have been assigned. The brown-haired man mentions he is completely fed up with engagement talk because of Rosian. Sylvia's hand rests on Leon's head as he resolves to focus on his duties as an attendant.
Leon and Sylvia enthusiastically plan the local specialties and food they will prepare for the guests.
Willilhart stands in the palace gardens, lost in deep thought about the upcoming arrivals. Sylvia explores the town in a modest dress and hat, looking for inspiration for their task.
She remembers how happy the children at Leon's old orphanage were during her visit.
Leon had specifically asked her to go and check on them because he was worried.
The young prince looks at Sylvia with pleading eyes as he makes his heartfelt request.
Walking through the busy streets, Sylvia wonders if the envoys have already arrived in the city.
She notes that her father hasn't responded to her letter yet, while wondering how to entertain the foreign princess.
A sudden, loud shout sounding as a commotion draws the attention of the surrounding townspeople.
Sylvia stops in her tracks, wondering what could be causing such a disturbance nearby.
A sudden, heavy clash sounding as a street fight breaks out between several men. The crowd watches in awe as a foreign man skillfully handles 3 attackers at once.
Sylvia gasps and covers her mouth as she witnesses the violent confrontation. The red-haired man smiles broadly as he delivers a finishing blow to his opponents.
He mocks the thugs, calling them weak shrimps as they collapse on the ground.
Sylvia stares at the man, feeling a strange sense of familiarity from somewhere in her past. She realizes the foreign man was only defending himself after being harassed by the thugs. Sylvia considers finding a guard to report the incident as the defeated thugs scramble to flee. A sudden, fast pounding sounding as the thugs shove past the crowd to escape.
Sylvia is caught off guard as she is knocked back by the fleeing men.
She closes her eyes and braces herself for the impact of falling to the ground. A sudden, firm catch sounding as the red-haired man reaches out and catches her in midair.
Sylvia looks up in bewilderment as she finds herself safely held in his arms.
The two share a brief, intense moment of eye contact as the stranger holds her steady. The red-haired man gazes at her with a look of recognition, asking if she is who he thinks she is.
Sylvia blushes, noting he smells like perfume while she tries to remember where they met.
A sudden, light tap sounding as the stranger gently sets her back on her feet.
Sylvia offers her thanks while the man casually notes that the attackers got away.
Internally, Sylvia admires his handsome features and wild aura, comparing him to Willilhart. A sudden, low groan sounding as a thug winces in pain near the red-haired man's legs. A thug with brown hair brandishes a dagger, demanding to know how Sylvia dares look down upon them.
The silver-haired woman stares at the blade with a look of pure terror.
The red-haired man shouts a warning just as Sylvia unleashes a surge of wind magic, blowing the shocked attacker backward.
Sylvia stands frozen and blushing as the red-haired stranger remains protective behind her. The surrounding crowd is baffled by the sudden, powerful wind and suspects the woman had something to do with it. Sylvia realizes she was far too flashy with her magic, while the red-haired man asks if she was trying to save him. Internally, Sylvia screams in frustration, realizing she just ignored her own advice about using magic in public.
A sudden, rhythmic click sounding as Sylvia decides she needs to escape the scene immediately. The red-haired man watches her with a sharp and focused gaze.
A sudden firm grab sounding as the stranger catches her arm and begs her to wait.
Sylvia looks back in surprise as the man asks for her name.
He expresses his sincere gratitude for the rescue and asks her once more to identify herself. Sylvia stammers, unable to find the words as she looks into his intense eyes. A sudden, heavy sigh sounding as Sylvia apologizes and promises to tell him her name if they ever meet again.
The red-haired man reaches out his hand as the silver-haired woman disappears into the crowd.
Sylvia runs away as fast as she can, leaving the man to watch her retreating figure.
The stranger touches his necklace, his expression unreadable as he stands in the street.
He reflects on her parting words, wondering if they truly will cross paths again someday. The scene shifts back to the quiet and grand architecture of the palace.
A sudden rhythmic click sounding as the dark-haired Willilhart walks through the hall, calling out for Sylvia. The brown-haired man reflects on the fact that Sylvia was supposed to visit the town today. Willilhart considers the implications of the engagement involving the prince of the Hitoria kingdom. He imagines Sylvia's father shouting in anger, knowing the man's volatile and greedy nature. Willilhart fears the Duke will use this as an excuse to ship his daughter off to a distant land. The man's face darkens with rage at the thought of a father who would ignore his own child's wishes. Willilhart grips his sword, wishing he could cut the prince down but worrying that Sylvia might actually love the stranger.
He shakes his head to clear the dark thoughts, trying to regain his composure.
He reminds himself that someone as responsible as Sylvia would never abandon her duty to Prince Leon. Willilhart becomes lost in thought, his eyes softening as he thinks specifically about Sylvia. A sudden rhythmic click sounding as Willilhart stops in surprise upon seeing the woman return. A sudden weary sigh sounding as Sylvia catches her breath, lamenting how badly the trip went. A memory of a young, crying Leon appears, illustrating her habit of picking up troubled souls. Willilhart greets her, causing the startled silver-haired woman to jump slightly. The Duke admits that he was also startled by her sudden appearance. Willilhart offers a charming smile, admitting that he was just thinking about her.
A sudden heavy thud sounding as Sylvia's heart skips a beat, leaving her completely flustered.
Sylvia is overwhelmed by what she perceives as Willilhart's devastatingly natural charm. She hides her blushing face behind her hat, unable to look him in the eye.
Willilhart's expression shifts to one of quiet realization as he notices something different about her.
Sylvia quickly explains that she might have picked up a strange scent while she was in the busy town.
A brief memory flashes of the red-haired stranger holding her close in the middle of the street. Willilhart's eyes glow with a dangerous red light as he wonders if she was held by a foreign man. A sudden rhythmic click sounding as Sylvia realizes the atmosphere around Willilhart has become incredibly heavy. Willilhart leans in close, his voice low and demanding as he asks what happened with that man in town. Sylvia is trapped between him and her own nerves, unable to give a clear answer. A single dark feather floats downward as a moment of tense silence hangs in the air. Sylvia continues to blush, her hands gripping her hat tightly as she faces his interrogation. Willilhart places a hand against the wall, effectively cornering the nervous silver-haired woman. A sudden, loud shout sounding as a distraction approaches from further down the hallway. A sudden, light tap sounding as Leon runs toward them with a bright and joyful smile. Willilhart leans in close, his voice low and intense as he questions Sylvia about her activities in town. A sudden, light tap sounding as Leon placed a finger to his lips, curious about the scene before him. Sylvia frantically denies any suspicious behavior while Leon remains unconvinced by her explanation. A sudden, rhythmic click sounding as Leon ponders the situation, his finger tapping his chin in thought. Sylvia's eyes widen with a sudden, sharp realization about the task ahead. A vibrant and elegant princess with deep red hair and orange eyes appears, framed by blooming flowers. A sudden, soft rustle sounding as she daintily lifts her patterned skirt in a polite greeting.
The red-haired girl introduces herself as a royal from the kingdom of Hitoria.
Sylvia is shocked to realize the girl is the princess of an allied negotiation country.
Sylvia bows deeply, apologizing for her late greeting and identifying herself to the young princess. A sudden light rustle sounding as Willilhart also offers a formal bow. Willilhart identifies himself and his role as Prince Leon's loyal guard.
Princess Amleta urges them to stand, mentioning she has heard much about them from Prince Leon.
She explains that Leon considers them his family, causing a moment of touching reflection. Sylvia is visibly moved, her heart swelling with affection for the young prince. Leon enthusiastically explains that he was giving the princess a grand tour of the palace. The young prince looks at Amleta with an eager and hopeful expression.
Sylvia reflects on her progress, hoping she can quickly build a friendly relationship with the royal envoy.
Leon asks the princess which part of the palace she enjoyed visiting the most.
Princess Amleta hesitates, her expression shifting to one of mild discomfort.
The red-haired girl looks dejected as she reveals a surprising distaste for certain palace features. A sudden, sharp realization sounding as Sylvia wonders what exactly Leon showed the princess. A sudden, heavy thud sounding as the wall Leon showed her as mentioned, leaving Sylvia baffled. Sylvia is horrified to learn Leon chose to show the princess a completely unremarkable wall. The princess expresses her dislike for gardens because of the bugs that frequent them. Willilhart smirks while Sylvia is left speechless by the princess's difficult personality. Leon continues to chatter happily, oblivious to the princess's growing desire to go home. A sudden, weary sigh sounding as Princess Amleta internally begs to leave the exhausting situation. Sylvia realizes that the princess has built up a formidable emotional wall around herself. Willilhart and Sylvia sense a very difficult road ahead in their mission to entertain the envoy. Willilhart's tone becomes grave as he addresses Sylvia directly.
He demands to know every detail about the red-haired man she encountered in town earlier. Sylvia gasps in shock, her face flushing as Willilhart corners her with his question. Sylvia feels overwhelmed by the series of upheavals crashing into her life lately. A sudden, weary sigh sounding as Sylvia reflects on her recent exhausting days. She recalls the various problems, including the distant princess and Willilhart's recent displeasure. Sylvia's thoughts drift toward the unresolved matter of Prince Leon's potential fiancé.
She remembers that Princess Emletta's brother, another prince, is someone she hasn't even met yet.
A sudden, bright greeting sounding as a pink-haired girl catches Sylvia's attention.
The girl smiles sweetly, noting they haven't seen each other since the debut party.
Sylvia is startled to see Ashley and asks what she is doing at the palace. Ashley explains with a predatory grin that she is a candidate to marry the Prince of Hatoria. A sudden tight squeeze sounding as Sylvia grips her dress in shock at the news. Sylvia wonders about the fate of Rosian in light of this new development. She reflects on the painful memory of a man breaking off his engagement with her to be with Rosian. A sudden, light giggle sounding as Ashley's face appears in a small, cheerful bubble. Ashley boldly claims that she is the only one suitable for a prince of an entire nation. A sudden, sharp click sounding as the two girls' heels face each other amidst blooming flowers.
Ashley mockingly apologizes to Sylvia, confident that she will be the one chosen in the end.
Sylvia looks down, trying to find her words in the face of such arrogance.
Sylvia and Ashley are startled as a man's foot steps into view.
The red-haired man from town appears, looking regal and imposing. Sylvia is shocked to recognize the man she previously rescued. Ashley is immediately delighted by the handsome stranger's arrival.
Ashley offers a greeting while the man spots Sylvia with excitement. He sweeps Sylvia into a joyful embrace, calling it fate.
Sylvia frantically begs him to put her down in the hallway.
Ashley is stunned and horrified by the man's clear favoritism.
Dark roses bloom, signaling a shift to a more somber atmosphere.
Ashley stares in total disbelief at the scene unfolding before her.
The man apologizes and gently releases Sylvia from his hold.
He explains he was simply overwhelmed with joy to see her.
Sylvia begins to realize the man's true identity as a royal. He identifies himself as a prince from the kingdom of Hatoria.
The prince formally announces his intention to propose marriage to Sylvia. Sylvia is rendered completely speechless by the sudden marriage proposal. She struggles to process that the stranger is actually a prince.
He recounts his secret visit to town to scout their country.
He reveals he had already selected her from the candidate list. The prince recalls falling for her bravery during the town rescue.
He asks her to finally reveal her name personally to him.
Sylvia reflects on her previous promise to tell him their names. She prepares to introduce herself formally as he holds her hand. Ashley rudely interrupts the moment, demanding the prince's full attention. Ashley presents herself as a potential bride with practiced, sweet charm.
She boasts of her reputation while the prince looks increasingly annoyed.
The prince harshly compares her pushy behavior to demonic servants. He rejects her, noting she was disrespectful to Sylvia just now.
Ashley is devastated, questioning why her charms failed to work.
He makes it clear he has no interest in her personality.
Ashley seethes with a silent and intense, humiliated rage. The prince ignores her and leads Sylvia away from the scene.
A sudden, weary sigh sounding as a brown-haired man stands alone. He laments having to deal with Ashley's incredibly selfish behavior. A pink shoe steps down with a sharp, echoing click. Ashley runs to Rosen, tearfully demanding that he listen to her.
She tearfully claims Sylvia was cruel and sabotaged her marriage chances. Rosian is stunned to hear that Ashley actually encountered Sylvia.
Rosian identifies himself as Sylvia's former fiancé, still missing her dearly.
Ashley scolds him for still clinging to a dead engagement.
An older silver-haired woman watches the arguing pair from afar. She realizes the bickering duo could be useful tools for her.
A sudden, sharp click sounding as the woman closes her fan.
She vows to eliminate both Sylvia and young Prince Leon together.
The prince apologizes to Sylvia as they walk alone together.
He asks Sylvia to give him a personal tour of the palace.
Sylvia agrees, noting he is Princess Emletta's older brother.
The prince expresses his gratitude with a charming, warm smile. They continue their walk together up the grand palace stairs.
He reiterates his serious desire to marry the silver-haired woman. Sylvia hesitates to answer Prince Ishval's blunt question while he looks on with intense curiosity.
Ishval reaches out to touch her face, wondering if there is something more she wants to say to him. Amidst a blooming field of white flowers, the tan prince gazes intently at the silver-haired woman.
Sylvia blushes deeply as she reflects on her feelings for the person she truly likes.
Her thoughts are interrupted as Willilhart calls out to her while walking by them. A moment of tense transition follows as Willilhart begins to ask about the identity of her companion.
Willilhart stands tall in his ornate red and gold formal attire, looking stern and regal.
The dark-haired man walks past the pair, causing Ishval to cross his arms in silent observation.
Ishval greets Willilhart with a bright smile, recognizing him as the person who offered guidance earlier.
Ishval confirms that Willilhart previously showed him to the guest chambers of the palace in a polite flashback. The red-haired prince narrows his eyes, sensing an unspoken and heavy tension in the air.
Willilhart remains stoic as he asks what kind of relationship exists between Sylvia and the foreign prince.
Sylvia's face turns bright red as she struggles to process the sudden inquiry about their connection.
She insists they have no special relationship, despite memories of her closeness with Willilhart and Prince Leon.
Willilhart explains to the newcomer that Sylvia is the benefactor who saved the young prince's life. He acknowledges that she has been a great help to him personally, recalling their many shared moments. Willilhart maintains a cold and unreadable expression as he stares down at the silver-haired woman.
Sylvia looks away, feeling flustered and overwhelmed by the weight of his serious gaze.
Ishval chuckles to himself, noting that it is quite obvious how close the two of them are.
He stands beside them in the palace garden, observing their dynamic with an amused and knowing look.
The foreign prince asks for confirmation that they aren't actually lovers, his gaze turning sharp and focused. Ishval takes Sylvia's hand in his, preparing to make a bold move in front of his rival.
A sudden soft kiss sounding as Ishval brushes his lips against her hand, leaving her completely stunned.
Willilhart watches the scene unfold with an expression of barely contained fury and intense jealousy.
Ishval declares that since she is unattached, he has every right to court Sylvia for himself.
The prince laughs heartily while Sylvia protests his forwardness with a mix of anger and embarrassment. He bids her farewell for the day, asking her to provide a proper tour of the palace later.
Ishval waves goodbye as he walks away, leaving a lingering sense of mischief in his wake.
Sylvia stands in silence as Willilhart turns to leave the area without saying another word.
Willilhart deduces that the mysterious man she encountered in town was indeed Prince Ishval himself.
Sylvia can only look on in nervous silence as the truth of her secret meeting comes to light.
He stops and asks if she truly intends to accept the sudden marriage proposal from the foreign royal. She is caught off guard by the bluntness of his question, looking up at him in utter confusion. Sylvia remains speechless, unable to find the right words to explain the chaotic situation she's in.
Willilhart begins to walk away, his expression hidden as he continues his final thought to her.
He turns back to remind her that he was serious about her being precious to him, urging her to remember. A sudden, heavy heartbeat sounding as Sylvia watches him go, her face flushed with shock and warmth.
The dark-haired man ascends the palace stairs alone, leaving the woman to process his unexpected confession. Several days pass since the arrival of the royals, and Sylvia goes about her duties with a heavy heart. She notes that the prince visits frequently during his breaks, continuing his persistent and public courtship. A sudden, weary sigh sounding as Sylvia admits she doesn't truly understand the depth of his feelings.
She reflects on how awkward things have become between her and Willilhart following their recent emotional conversation.
Sylvia worries about Ashley's intentions, suspecting the pink-haired girl is still aiming to capture the prince's heart.
A sudden, frustrated groan sounding as she feels caught between the competing demands of the people around her. Her attention shifts toward Prince Leon and Princess Amleta sitting together on a palace bench. Leon enthusiastically suggests holding a tournament, leaving the young princess looking curious about the idea.
He explains they will fight magical golems to show off their skill, hoping to impress the royal guest.
Princess Amleta looks intrigued by the prospect of such a traditional and exciting palace event.
Leon beams with joy, confident that the princess will find the upcoming competition to be great fun.
Sylvia watches from afar, pleased to see Leon properly acting as a host for their country's traditions.
Sylvia peeks around a wall, smiling softly.
She blushes happily while floating amidst feathers.
Leon enthusiastically announces that he has more to say.
He identifies Willilhart as the previous champion, while a sudden, heavy heartbeat sounding as Sylvia blushes at the sight of him.
Leon notes that Willilhart has won the last 3 tournaments and finds it amazing.
The young royals talk together among flowers.
Sylvia peeks from behind a palace pillar.
A sudden startled gasp sounding as the red-haired prince appears and greets her casually.
Sylvia is shocked to be addressed by Prince Ishval so suddenly.
He suggests they keep quiet so they don't get in the way of the children.
Ishval asks Sylvia if she would give him some of her time right now.
He clarifies that he wants to speak with her privately.
Sylvia's confused as she recalls him wanting to talk to her alone. Sylvia follows the prince through the gardens.
He notes that she likely doesn't take his flirtations very seriously.
Sylvia is left stammering and unable to find an answer.
A sudden soft rustle sounding as he begins to explain his true motivations.
He explains that he simply wanted her to know him better and see his sincerity.
He notes that in his country, men are allowed to have many wives.
He reveals the purpose is to ensure the royal family has many children.
He explains that this often leads to the younger children being neglected.
A sudden heavy heartbeat sounding as the word neglect triggers a wave of childhood memories for Sylvia.
He states that while he won't deny his country's ways, he never wants to neglect his own family.
A sudden soft chime sounding as he touches her hair and vows his chosen woman will be his only one.
He promises to love his chosen wife with his whole heart. He admits that he found her strong-willed appearance impressive from the start.
He recalls their chance meeting and falling in love with her bravery.
He expresses his certainty that together they could build a family that values each other.
A sudden soft rustle sounding as he promises to respect all their children equally.
A sudden fluttering sound as Sylvia realizes she finally understands the meaning behind his words.
Sylvia looks on with wide, trembling eyes.
Willilhart greets Sylvia formally while standing among winter berries.
Sylvia claps her hands together and blushes.
Ishval looks away with a serious expression. He announces his firm decision to participate in the upcoming tournament as well.
A sudden cheerful laugh sounding as he explains that a guest challenger would make the event more interesting.
Sylvia is shocked to hear that Lord Ishval plans to compete in the tournament.
He leans in close, revealing that he is aiming for the winner's prize.
He acknowledges he will be facing Willilhart and asks for Sylvia's support. Ishval bids her a polite farewell for now.
Sylvia wonders if he was referring to the specific reward for the champion. A woman kisses the ornate royal crown. She wonders if Prince Ishval really intends to win her over through the competition.
Sylvia looks down with a pensive expression.
She reflects on the fact that if Willilhart won 3 times, he must have received a kiss from someone. A sudden sharp throb sounding as she grips her chest, feeling a strange discomfort at the thought. A sudden, quiet shuffle sounding as the tan-skinned maid reveals that Willilhart has never actually received a kiss.
The maid explains that he previously disdained the tradition as nonsense.
She suggests with a knowing smile that this year he might choose Sylvia as his partner.
Sylvia is left utterly shocked and blushing at the maid's sudden proclamation. The dark-skinned maid observes with a knowing smile that popular women certainly have a difficult time.
Sylvia covers her blushing face in denial, insisting there's no way the maid's suggestion could be true.
Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the Rosian estate where a pained gasp echoes through the quiet halls. Lord Rosian sits alone in his chamber, repeatedly whispering Sylvia's name while clutching his head in visible distress.
Rosian reflects on his sudden lovesickness, questioning why he spent so much time prioritizing Ashley over Sylvia. Driven by a desperate urge to see her, he reminds himself that he is still Sylvia's rightful fiancé.
A sudden, quiet shuffle sounding outside the closed doors of the estate.
A maid tentatively enters the room to inform Lord Rosian that a delivery has arrived for him.
Rosian looks up with a suspicious and exhausted expression, questioning who would send him a package. He takes the mysterious, ornate purple box into his hands, wondering about its contents as feathers float around him. He decides to open the box to identify the sender, but stops short when he sees what is inside. A sudden, sharp gasp sounding as he finds a sealed letter inside, eventually breaking into a chilling laugh as he realizes this item can help him reclaim Sylvia. A sudden, sharp crackling sounding as he crushes the letter, vowing to shower Sylvia with his twisted love and telling her to wait for his arrival. Transitional text and recruitment information for the studio appear as the story prepares for the next phase. The scene shifts to the grand arena, which is filled with an excited crowd as the tournament finally begins. Massive magical golems loom in the arena as Leon watches with wide-eyed wonder from the royal viewing box alongside Sylvia and Amletta. Leon is captivated by the impressive magical golems, while Sylvia admits it is her first time seeing such creatures in person as well. The young prince turns to his guest with a bright smile, asking if she is enjoying the spectacle. Amletta confesses she feels a bit frightened, worried that someone might get hurt during the intense competition. She expresses hope that everyone stays safe, especially since her brother, Prince Ishval, has decided to join the fray. Sylvia reflects on the fact that the foreign prince made a very sudden decision to enter the tournament.
Leon offers a cheerful reassurance, confident that the event will proceed without any trouble.
He explains that skilled mages are carefully controlling the golems, adjusting their attacks to ensure that none of the participants are seriously harmed. When Amletta asks for further confirmation on their safety, Leon gives her a definitive and happy yep. Sylvia thinks to herself that Prince Leon is becoming more reliable with each passing day. She gazes at the young prince with a warm, sisterly smile, proud of the host he has become. Leon proudly declares that Willilhart is the strongest person there and will surely keep everyone safe.
A sudden, sharp glint sounding as Amleta clutches her dress, clearly having her own opinion on who is the best.
She asserts that her brother Ishval wouldn't lose to a mere human, challenging Leon's claim about Willilhart's supremacy.
A sudden, loud boom sounding as an invisible spark of rivalry ignites between the two young royals over their respective champions.
The two children begin a spirited debate, each insisting that their favored prince will be the ultimate winner of the tournament.
Sylvia chuckles at their adorable bickering, finding their competitive spirit quite charming.
A sudden, soft shimmer sounding as Sylvia's attention is pulled toward the arena floor.
The children cheer enthusiastically as they spot both Willilhart and Ishval entering the arena at the same time.
Willilhart stands tall and regal in his ornate tournament attire, his hand resting firmly on the hilt of his blade.
Prince Ishval exudes a confident and charismatic aura, wearing his exotic and elaborate royal tournament garments.
A sudden, sharp metallic ring sounding as Willilhart draws his sword, facing off against a massive, fire-breathing golem.
Willilhart moves like a blur of red and silver, expertly cutting through the golem's magical defenses with precise strikes.
He notes with a focused expression that the magical golems seem to be significantly faster than the ones he faced in the previous tournament. Across the arena, Prince Ishval maintains a sharp and steady gaze, analyzing the challenge before him.
Leon shouts in triumph, thrilled by Willilhart's impressive display of swordsmanship.
A sudden, heavy swish sounding as Ishval launches a powerful offensive, declaring that a strong attack is the best form of protection.
Amleta beams with pride as she watches her brother's formidable performance in the arena.
Sylvia observes that the two princes are perfectly matched in skill, with the audience's support divided equally between them.
The maid notes that it's currently impossible to predict who will earn the coveted kiss of victory from the lady of their choice.
Sylvia becomes flustered and tells the maid to stop teasing her with such bold suggestions. Despite her embarrassment, Sylvia's expression softens as she begins to worry about the outcome of the fight. Her heart begins to pull in a certain direction, hoping that Willilhart will be the one to prevail over the foreign prince.
She watches the match with a soft, blushing gaze, her true feelings for Willilhart clearly visible in her eyes.
A sudden, sharp electrical buzz sounding as the magical golems begin to malfunction, causing Willilhart to look up in alarm.
A sudden, loud growl sounding as a magical golem erupts with dark energy while Sylvia gasps in shock at the unfolding chaos.
A sudden, frantic clatter sounding as a guard warns everyone to run away immediately to escape the out-of-control golems.
Sylvia is horrified to realize that the sorcerers controlling the golems were poisoned as part of a deliberate plan to make them go berserk.
Sylvia wonders who is behind the plot as she suspiciously recalls the mysterious woman with the purple fan.
While the guards prepare to subdue the creatures, Sylvia notes that she can use her own magic to assist the contestants.
Sylvia resolves to help Lord Willilhart.
Sylvia commands the maid to take the children to a safe place while the woman confirms the order. Prince Leon insists on using his fire magic to help as Sylvia looks back at the brave young prince.
Sylvia promises to be careful.
A sudden, sharp scream sounding as a flash of light streaks across the sky while Sylvia hurries through the palace. Sylvia rushes toward the arena, desperate to reach Lord Willilhart and Prince Ishval as quickly as possible.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounding as a mysterious hand grabs Sylvia from the shadows, leaving her crying out in terror.
A sudden, metallic snap sounding as an ornate bracelet is clamped onto Sylvia's wrist, leaving her stunned and powerless.
Sylvia is horrified to find herself in the grasp of Lord Rosian, who claims he has been desperate to see her. Rosian's name echoes amidst purple flowers. A sudden, loud boom sounding as the panicked crowd is urged to run away while the golems continue their rampage. Willilhart notes that facing 3 enhanced golems alone is a challenge and concludes that this chaos is someone's scheme.
Willilhart suspects the woman with the fan is responsible and decides to lend a hand in the fight.
Prince Ishval draws his blade. Willilhart apologizes for getting Ishval involved, but the foreign prince admits he doesn't mind a good fight.
Ishval notes he has one question to ask, while Willilhart wonders what it could possibly be.
Ishval asks Willilhart directly if he is in love with Sylvia. A sudden, sharp ring sounding as Willilhart confirms his feelings for Sylvia, noting he is certain of his stance. A sudden, heavy thud sounding as the massive golem looms over them, preventing any further conversation about their rivalry.
Willilhart stares with intense determination.
Ishval smiles at Willilhart's answer.
The two princes charge forward.
A sudden, bright flash sounding as the battle reaches a fever pitch with a massive explosion of light.
A sudden, rhythmic clink sounding as the dark-skinned maid leads the 2 children past the palace guards.
A guard greets the young prince and urges him to head to the imperial palace for his safety.
Leon commands the maid to follow Sylvia instead.
The maid looks on silently.
Leon insists that Sylvia is in more danger than they are and begs the maid to help her.
A sudden, soft whoosh sounding as Leon conjures a flame in his hand to show his resolve.
Leon vows to protect Himletta no matter what happens, leaving the young girl staring at him in wonder.
The maid acknowledges his brave request. A sudden, loud shout sounding as Leon calls out to the maid, pleading with her to save his family. A sudden, heavy crash sounding as Willilhart delivers a powerful strike to one of the massive stone creatures.
Willilhart notes that only one golem is left as he prepares for the final blow.
Willilhart reflects on the golem's enhanced strength and begins to worry if Sylvia and Leon are safe.
Ishval praises Willilhart's strength, but notes it is a shame they are rivals for the same woman's love.
The dark-skinned maid rushing up.
Willilhart welcomes the extra help but immediately asks for an update on Sylvia's whereabouts.
Willilhart is stunned to hear that Sylvia has not arrived, as she should have reached him already. The maid explains that Sylvia left them to find Willilhart, and her absence suggests she is in grave danger. A sudden, sharp throb sounding as Willilhart and Ishval both realize with horror that Sylvia has gone missing. A sudden, heavy slam sounding as Rosian pins Sylvia to the ground while she cries out in pain. The scene reveals they are tracked. A sudden, soft gasp sounding as Rosian informs Sylvia that they are in an unused armory where no one will hear her.
Rosian laughs madly while explaining that the bracelet seals her magic, rendering her a weak and defenseless woman.
Sylvia demands to know why Rosian has the bracelet and asks if he was the one who poisoned the mages controlling the golems.
A sinister smile spreads across the face of the pink-haired woman as Sylvia stares back in shock.
Ashley admits she was surprised by the effectiveness of the medicine she mixed into the drinks, while Sylvia realizes she is involved.
Ashley recalls how an anonymous letter and medicine arrived at her mansion, promising that everything would happen as she wanted if she followed the instructions.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounding as Rosian muffles Sylvia's mouth when she threatens to reveal their selfish ruin of the tournament.
Rosian stares with a crazed expression, whispering that everything will be fine as long as they are not found out.
Rosian licks his lips while telling Sylvia she will become his body and soul before he keeps her as a pet at his villa.
Ashley's face is flushed with dark joy as she repeatedly whispers Sylvia's name.
She fantasizes about being the one chosen by the prince and living a life of luxury once Sylvia is disgraced and gone.
Sylvia realizes with horror that neither of them is listening, and she cannot believe they would resort to such insane measures.
A sudden, sharp tug sounding as Rosian grabs Sylvia's collar, declaring that he will now do whatever he wants.
A sudden, loud rip sounding as Rosian tears Sylvia's clothing, shouting that he is doing this because he loves her.
Sylvia screams for him to stop and let go as he looms over her, repeating his twisted declarations of love.
Ashley laughs maniacally, telling Sylvia she deserves this for being cocky and putting things off for so long.
Sylvia lies helpless, her silver hair splayed out as she cries for Lord Willilhart amidst a backdrop of dark, thorny magic.
Her voice echoes in desperation as she calls out for Lord Willilhart to save her.
A sudden heavy bang sounding as a door is kicked open and Willilhart charges in, shouting for Miss Sylvia. Rosian is stunned to see the man he calls a battle-maniac and wonders how he could have possibly found this hidden place. Willilhart draws his blade with an intense, fiery gaze, commanding Rosian to get away from Sylvia immediately.
A sudden, sharp metallic ring sounding as Willilhart grips his sword, declaring he has no intention of forgiving Rosian anymore.
With red eyes glowing in fury, Willilhart vows to cut off the dirty hands that touched Sylvia. Rosian trembles in fear while Sylvia reaches out to stop Willilhart, shouting a desperate no. Sylvia grabs Willilhart's arm as he prepares to strike the cowering man.
She warns him that if he takes action now, he will be the one to get in trouble, which is the last thing she wants. Sylvia worries that executing Rosian without a proper arrest would put Lord Willilhart's royal position in grave jeopardy.
A sudden soft gasp sounding as a delusional Rosian assumes that Sylvia is trying to save him because she still cares. He laughs with wide eyes, convinced they are in love, while Willilhart and Sylvia look on with grim expressions.
Rosian reaches toward Sylvia with a sickening smile, pleading for them to get back together.
A sudden, sharp crack sounding as Sylvia delivers a powerful magical slap that sends Rosian reeling.
Rosian clutches his reddened face, completely bewildered by the sudden rejection.
Sylvia tells him firmly that she could never love him because he only cares about his own convenience, and her hatred for him makes her sick. She declares that he will regret what he did to her forever as he falls to the ground in a state of shock.
A sudden, high-pitched scream sounding as Rosian's mind breaks, leaving him clutching his head in agony.
Sylvia stands tall and composed while the broken man grovels on the floor before her. She turns to Willilhart and apologizes, noting that she was the one who ended up getting angry. Willilhart looks at her with a gentle gaze, remarking that her reaction was very much like her. A sudden, quick click sounding as Willilhart's hand brushes against Sylvia while she asks how they found her.
He explains that the maid Kokoru alerted them to the situation and they found the location with Prince Ishval's help.
Sylvia blushes warmly as she processes the effort they made to save her from danger.
A sudden, soft rustle sounding as Willilhart drapes his red cloak over Sylvia's shoulders to cover her torn clothing.
Willilhart pulls her into a tight, protective hug against a backdrop of white flowers, whispering his gratitude.
He closes his eyes in relief, expressing how truly glad he is that she is safe.
A sudden, soft thud sounding as Sylvia hugs him back, realizing she can no longer suppress her deep feelings for him.
Her heart overflows with love for Lord Willilhart as the scene is framed by blooming white petals.
Sylvia pulls away slightly to ask about Ashley's whereabouts, noting the other woman was there just moments ago.
The scene shifts to the dark and quiet armory, which stands empty and silent after the struggle. A sudden, frantic pitter-patter sounding as a pair of heels clicks quickly down the palace hallway.
Ashley flees in a panic, cursing her luck and the fact that Willilhart showed up to save Sylvia. She decides she will make up an excuse and blame Rosian for everything once she escapes, so she can remain safe.
A sudden, heavy thud sounding as Ashley stops in her tracks, coming face to face with a massive, muscular figure blocking her path.
Ashley is gripped by a sudden, sharp gasp as she realizes she has been caught.
Prince Ishval confronts Ashley, declaring that he will not let her get away and calling her an ugly fairy woman.
Ishval explains he suspected Ashley is the most likely culprit behind any attack on Sylvia, while the maid Kokoru notes that her plan was incredibly sloppy and ill-conceived.
Sylvia calls out Ashley's name as the pink-haired woman groans in frustration, her escape path blocked by Lord Willilhart.
Ishval stares down the villain, telling her that it is finally over.
A sudden, heavy thud sounding as Ishval stands before the group, commanding Ashley to simply accept her fate. Ashley clutches her dress in a panic, wondering why someone as cute as herself has to endure such a situation.
Amidst dark flowers, Ashley reflects that all of her misfortune is because of one specific person.
Ashley snarls with rage while Sylvia looks on with a calm, focused expression.
A production notice for Studio Nami announces they are hiring for several positions.
A promotional banner for Violet Scans invites readers to join their community.
Ashley is consumed by madness, but Sylvia remains steady as she touches her bracelet and tells herself that it is okay.
Sylvia reflects on her magical power returning and notes that because they were in Rejection, he was unable to fully utilize magic tools.
A sudden, loud scream sounding as Ashley hysterically blames Sylvia for everything that has gone wrong. Sylvia stands tall while Ashley collapses in a fit of desperation and feathers fall around them. Memories of past bitterness surface as Sylvia addresses Ashley as Ashery, noting the long history of pain the other woman has caused her. A sudden, bright flash sounding as Sylvia unleashes a magical burst, vowing to pay Ashley back for everything all at once right here.
Sylvia's magic sends Ashley reeling back until she falls defeated on the floor.
Ashley grovels at Sylvia's feet, insulting her by calling her the lowest of the low while admitting that things have changed. Sylvia looks down at the broken woman, asking how long ago that version of her existed.
A sudden, soft gasp sounding as Willilhart catches Sylvia when she begins to faint, calling out her name in concern. Sylvia rests peacefully in Willilhart's arms.
Willilhart holds Sylvia's hands tightly, whispering that she truly is a remarkably strong woman. A sudden, loud cheer sounding as the scene shifts back to the grand arena where the battle has concluded.
The crowd is amazed as Willilhart delivers a final, powerful strike to the remaining golems.
Sylvia cheers excitedly from the balcony, celebrating the fact that Lord Willilhart defeated the stone giants again.
Sylvia tells Kokoru she is relieved the tournament could be redone, and the maid offers her agreement. The narrator notes that, fortunately, no one was injured during the golem's rampage as the debris is cleared away.
Guards lead the bound Rosian and Ashley away as Rosian pleads for release, claiming they were merely manipulated.
Rosian insists that anonymous letters at his estate will prove someone else is the real mastermind and that he was just following orders.
A guard informs Ashley that no such letters were ever found and orders her to confess to being the ringleader.
Ashley stares blankly in shock as her lies crumble around her.
A hand grips a fan as Sylvia muses about the true identity of the mastermind.
Sylvia realizes that if a mastermind exists, they likely used hired agents to dispose of all incriminating evidence, meaning Rosian and the others were merely used, though she admits she feels no sympathy for them.
Rosian and Ashley are shown shackled in a dark prison cell to reflect on their crimes.
Kokoru asks Sylvia if she has forgotten something important, leaving the silver-haired woman looking confused.
Kokoru points out that the victory of the Grand Duke is decided and reminds Sylvia that the winner must receive a kiss.
Sylvia reacts with total shock.
A sudden, soft giggle sounding as a panicked chibi Sylvia worries that the upright Lord Willilhart might not necessarily choose her.
Kokoru shrugs noncommittally, suggesting that no one can be certain. The young girl Amleta stares at Leon as they sit together in the palace.
A sudden, quick rustle sounding as Leon reaches out to hold Amleta's hand.
A blushing Amletta asks Leon if she can inquire about his ideal type of woman.
Leon smiles warmly and says he likes someone cool like Sylvia, while Amletta realizes he just wanted an excuse to hold her hand.
Amletta vows to do her best to be cool, leaving Leon completely puzzled. Ishval admits to Willilhart that he is one after all and seems to take everything for himself.
Ishval reflects on Willilhart's deep devotion and care for Sylvia.
Ishval informs a surprised Willilhart that he is giving up on Sylvia and returning to his own country. Ishval places a hand on Willilhart's shoulder, asking for a favor to help him cut off his lingering feelings.
Willilhart looks towards Sylvia with a serious expression, whispering her name as she watches him from the balcony.
Lord Willilhart and Sylvia stand together on a decorated stage.
A blushing Sylvia questions if providing a victory kiss is truly necessary.
Lord Willilhart pulls Sylvia close and explains he chose her specifically. He gazes intently at her, asking her to proceed if she is willing.
A sudden, soft rustle sounding as Sylvia reaches out to touch his chest.
Sylvia gently kisses Lord Willilhart's cheek amidst a backdrop of blooming flowers. A sudden, loud cheer sounding as the audience erupts in joyous applause.
The pair gazes into each other's eyes during a quiet, romantic moment. Clenching a handful of letters, a cloaked woman vows revenge for next time. Prince Ishval prepares to depart as large sailing ships wait in the harbor.
Lord Willilhart and Sylvia stand together as Princess Amletta watches them.
Ishval smiles, noting the alliance is settled and promising to return for fun.
He looks down at Princess Amletta, asking if she wants to come too.
A sudden soft flutter sounding as Leon watches the princess with wide eyes.
Leon beams with joy, inviting Princess Amletta to visit them anytime.
Princess Amletta blushes deeply, overwhelmed with happiness by Leon's warm invitation. Sylvia muses about passing the test and suggests a future city walk.
A lavender-haired woman reflects that Leon only needs the Emperor's acknowledgement now.
Prince Ishval addresses Lord Willilhart as they stand near the water's edge.
Ishval urges Willilhart to confess his love to Sylvia quickly before he loses her.
Lord Willilhart looks shocked by the prince's blunt romantic advice.
Ishval warns that if Willilhart is too slow, he will take Sylvia himself.
A sudden, quick tap sounding as Prince Ishval begins to walk away.
Ishval waves goodbye to the group, claiming he was being serious just now.
Sylvia watches the departing prince with a soft, thoughtful expression.
Lord Willilhart rests his hand on his head, looking visibly troubled.
The next day, the maid Kokaru finds Leon studying at his desk.
Leon pauses his reading to look up with a pensive face.
Kokaru asks if there is a problem with his history lesson. She wonders if his teacher might be slacking off on his duties. Leon confesses he is actually preoccupied with Sylvia and Willilhart's lack of progress. Kokaru notes that adults often have complicated reasons for hiding their feelings.
Leon insists that he simply wants the two of them to be happy together.
A sudden quick click sounding as Leon prepares to write down a plan. Leon triumphantly reveals his secret operation to bring the two adults together. Kokaru briefly considers advising the prince to stay out of romantic affairs. She stops herself, her expression shifting to one of intrigue.
Kokaru decides the initiative is interesting and agrees to help with the plan.
The two conspirators cheer as they prepare for their first strategy meeting. 1 week later, the group gathers near a fountain in the garden. Sylvia is startled by the sudden suggestion of taking a trip.
Leon enthusiastically proposes a 4-day excursion to a scenic location.
Lord Willilhart remains silent and stoic while listening to the boys' idea.
Leon pleads with them to go so they can finally relax.
A sudden soft thud sounding as Sylvia's heart flutters at the suggestion.
Sylvia expresses concern that leaving Prince Leon alone would be irresponsible.
Lord Willilhart agrees that it would be dangerous for both guardians to leave.
Sylvia worries about the mysterious mastermind and what she might try next.
Kokaru promises to provide constant round-the-clock security for Leon during their trip.
She guarantees that she will notify them immediately if any emergency occurs. Sylvia clutches her hands, telling Kokaru she feels relieved yet still remains uncertain.
A sudden, loud shout sounding as Lord Willilhart and Sylvia both cry out an objection.
The pair blushes deeply, clearly flustered by the current situation.
Kokaru and Prince Leon whisper together, plotting to give the two adults one final push. Leon points his finger upward with a determined flair. Standing amidst a field of sunflowers, Leon enthusiastically orders the two to take a relaxing trip together. Sylvia and Willilhart hide their blushing faces, realizing they must obey the order as Leon celebrates the finality of his decision. The scene shifts to the two together among red roses as the children wish them a wonderful journey. A grand horse-drawn carriage travels down a sunlit road bordered by blooming flowers. Inside the carriage, Willilhart and Sylvia sit across from each other in a heavy, awkward silence.
Willilhart looks away, his expression serious and unreadable.
Sylvia blushes as she looks at him, struggling to process the reality of their situation.
A cheerful chibi Leon beams with happiness.
Sylvia reflects on Leon's strange whims and notes that even the usually stoic Kokoru seemed to agree because it looked fun.
Willilhart mentions his lack of travel experience, while Sylvia admits she has only ever been on far-off missions.
Willilhart apologizes to Sylvia, fearing that his company might be boring for her.
Sylvia reacts with wide-eyed surprise at his humble apology.
Reaching out, Sylvia insists she is actually excited to go with him and looks forward to their destination.
Sylvia points toward the distance, noting the beautiful scenery and explaining that they will be staying at a former royal retreat.
Willilhart watches her with a subtle, softened expression. Willilhart asks Sylvia if she has ever traveled to a distant land before, and she gasps softly in response.
Bittersweet memories surface of Sylvia being left behind while her parents took her younger brother on outings.
Sylvia recalls how even her former fiancé, Rosian, would ignore her to spend all his time with Ashley, leaving her isolated at home.
Sylvia looks down sadly, confessing that this might actually be her very first real vacation. Willilhart gazes at her with deep sympathy and concern. A sudden soft rustle sounding as Willilhart reaches out to place his hand over Sylvia's.
Sylvia stares at him in shock, her face turning bright red.
Willilhart holds her hand firmly, promising to make the trip special for both of them.
Willilhart smiles warmly, expressing his hope that this becomes a cherished memory for her. Sylvia is visibly moved, her eyes shimmering with emotion at his kindness. Sylvia hides her face behind her hands, overwhelmed by her feelings.
Willilhart looks down thoughtfully, seemingly preoccupied with his own heart. Prince Ishval leans close to Willilhart, warning the other man that he is beginning to lose his self-control. Willilhart rests his chin on his hand, appearing deeply troubled. Surrounded by flowers, Willilhart wonders if he should finally convey his true feelings to Sylvia during this excursion.
2 hours later, the carriage arrives at a magnificent, sprawling white mansion.
Sylvia and Willilhart stand together in disbelief upon hearing there is only a single room available.
A servant explains that an imperial notice identified them as a couple, making it acceptable for them to share the room.
Sylvia gasps in total shock, blushing at the implication of being called a couple.
Elsewhere, a celebratory notice declares the plan a success as Chibi, Leon, and Kokoru high-five.
Willilhart asks if another room can be prepared immediately, but the servant hesitates.
The servant nervously explains that readying a second room will take a significant amount of time.
Sylvia worries that the servant might get into trouble because of their request.
Sylvia looks up at Willilhart, asking him what they should do now. Willilhart declares that as a man of the battlefield, he has no problem camping outside.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounding as Sylvia imagines Willilhart huddling by a lonely campfire in the dark.
Sylvia protests vehemently, refusing to let him stay outside alone despite her nerves. Blushing furiously, Sylvia shouts that she doesn't mind sharing the room with him after all.
Willilhart continues to offer to stay outside as a mysterious silhouette watches them from the shadows of a tree. A dark figure peers from behind a trunk, wondering about the true identity of the travelers.
Inside the lavish mansion, the pair discusses the peaceful history of the royal retreat and the preferences of the empress who designed it.
Sylvia's eyes widen at the discovery.
Blushing furiously, Sylvia realizes there is only one bed in the room.
A heavy, low sounding.
Willilhart expresses concern for her comfort as a startled, high-pitched escapes Sylvia's lips.
A sudden, sharp tug sounding as Sylvia grabs Willilhart's sleeve, insisting he stay inside.
Startled by her touch, Willilhart warns her about the consequences of pulling him so suddenly. The two fall toward each other, their bodies pressing together in a moment of shared shock.
A sudden, soft gasp sounding.
Reaching out to steady her, Willilhart apologizes as Sylvia winces from the impact of their collision. Sylvia blushes and apologizes, taking the blame for the clumsy accident that brought them together. A quiet apology drifts through the air. As they remain tangled together, a rhythmic, heavy thumping sounding as their hearts race while Willilhart watches her with burning intensity. Intense stares linger in the silence.